It's buffering.
That's not too bad. Let me scoot that over even a little more. There we go. Well, you know, arc or barge, six of one, half dozen of the other. You know. Anyhow, so we got our share of drizzle this weekend. Nothing like poor Lars did, but probably should have washed my face a little better. It's been a dirty weekend. And anyhow, we left Friday before noon, and we got out there. We had a lot of other stuff. Fine, Travis. It was probably pretty hot down there in Tucson. It was it wasn't too bad temperature wise. Friday, it was windy like all get out up on the mountain. I don't know what the wind velocity was, but I'm guessing in the 30s. And so, even though it was relatively warm, like probably around 90, no, no big deal. Of course, when I was down in the hole, it's nice and cool down there. Um, so, so anyhow, um, we got everything, started. We had to replace the pulley on the high line, had to replace the winch on the hoist. Um, had some other stuff to do too, I think. Well, I had to put in a stole and tighten up another one for a deck. And of course, that was right next to the decline internally, so I had to wear a harness there. So it took a little longer. And anyhow, did a lot of stuff, then started mining and hoisting, and we're just got started sending ore down the high line when it started raining. So we covered everything up that was on the mountain, and I quickly got the other stuff down off the mountain and even the Bago and got it covered up. By then it was about 6 o'clock, and it was raining modestly. So, hey there, Secret Creek. So anyhow, I got dinner cooked, and let's see, what was that? That was, let's see, hamburger.
That was a hamburger with lentils.
A hamburger and Madras lentils. And just about the time I got it cooked, it started going from a light drizzle to a rain. So we hunkered in the Bago all night. Next morning, it had kind of lightened up a bit. So I went and got a little field work done. There was a red zone that I wanted to get some samples of. It's 15 feet wide where I was at. Um, don't have much hope for it being a high grade zone because somebody took a dozer to it at some time in the past, and that's all they did was just scraped it off. Apparently, took a look at it. So it's probably not high grade. The two samples I've taken previously went 0 and 0.03 ounces per ton, but that's good enough to pay a little more attention. So anyhow, I went down there and got some work done, and then came back. We worked all day at the mine, and then, gosh, hey Kodak, um, Saturday, it wasn't raining too much during the day, was it? Or what did we do?
Yeah, Saturday was raining it was raining really, really light.
Really light, yeah.
And then that's when we started bringing more stuff down the hill.
Yeah.
And stacking the buckets and everything.
And then, yeah, we got some more ore down to the staging ground. And then called it a night. By then we were pretty wet. And what I did a couple weekends ago when we were up at top of the hill and it rained so much was we have a heater inside the Bago. Okay, it's a little buddy? Yeah, little buddy. Okay. And it's at one end, it's by the door and like that. So what I did was I backed off some of the screws in the ceiling and drilled a little hole in the end of the cabinet there, and then took some tie wire. Actually, it's concrete formed tie wire. What it actually is, but yeah, malleable iron wire, and made a couple zigzags across the ceiling with a little bit of slack, so we could hang stuff on there. We have a drying rack, and so all our clothes were dry again this morning. And no, let's see, that was Saturday. Sunday, same deal. It was Eva was sitting up there in her canopy chair. I've got some Flectarn BDU waterproof lowers, and then she was wearing a rain jacket and then an emergency rain poncho on top of that. And so she was sitting up on top.
Well, that's because we had been out there so that you could sample that red zone.
Yeah.
And I got soaked while you were doing it.
Oh, yeah. And so she was sitting on surface while I was working underground. And I got enough advance so that we could put another 5 feet of ladder track in there. Yeah, she was styling it. This time it wasn't pink, it was white. So it wasn't as pretty. Over at Dollar Tree?
Yeah.
At Dollar Tree, they have these little emergency ponchos. They're $1 each. And so
$1.25.
$1.25. Okay. So it's a $1.25 tree. But anyhow, so she was up there doing that, and we got enough ore stockpiled, and then we sent that down the hill, and then I put her in the Bago while I hauled it all down the hill and got it all on the trailer and tarped. And the problem with tarping is if you don't have a really good tarp, if it has the occasional hole, and that hole happens to be above a bucket, as the rain, fills it, it sags down in the bucket and it becomes a funnel. So we have several buckets that are pretty wet inside. And then this morning, while Eva slept in, I went up and put in that the cross bracing on that ladder track. I moved the secondary hoist cable in the new position on that ladder track to give us additional depth. And I think that's about it, except starting to pick stuff up. Hey, Tricky Dicky, how's it going? It felt kind of like the Philippines up here today. It was hot and humid. But so then today we got everything packed up. Yep. And I have not heard of him, Kodak. But anyhow, so we got everything all packed up and we were headed out roughly noon. And man, was that road slippery. Um, there was a um, couple spots we knew there was low spots. We were going to have to get through some water puddles, so I had it in 4-wheel drive. Then after we got back on the main dirt road, I put it in 2-wheel drive and headed out. And it was a little slippery. We're towing a trailer, and all I can say is I never got the truck more than 20 degrees angled to the direction of travel. But it was kind of fun at times. Yep. So yeah, we had us some fun on the way back. Let's see. There's uh, that's an MP4. Um, Let me check. I don't know if I can anything. Uh, any reason, Chris, not to view Tricky's MP4? Now let's see. It may have audio on it. I'll do it after we're done with the live stream, Tricky. Hey, Shiny Rocks. So anyhow, it was an interesting trip, and we got everything, all our goals accomplished except a full load of ore. We're probably at about half capacity, but we got some extra samples. There's also in the decline, we're getting into the area where I'm sure that this was a lot of ore there because they widened out a lot, and both width and depth. But they left some obvious mineralized zone stuff on the wall. I don't know why. I don't know if it was low grade or what. So even I took a sample of that, and I'll have to do some analysis on that. However, I'm not sure how they were processing this ore. Anyhow, there's no mill on site or anywhere close that I can see. Okay. I know that in Tucson, it was relatively common for people to mine gold containing quartz and sell that to the smelters. And so it when we look through the dumps there's very little quartz. Yet there's a fair amount of quartz in the mineralized zone itself. So it seems to me that they did something preferentially with the quartz, and that may be an explanation. Don't know. Can't find any information on it. Cool, Kodak. Yeah, yeah. I'm interested. I sent you an email back on that saying I have to check with the goddess in terms of funds availability. But anyhow,
Not until the paycheck comes in,
I understand.
Social Security.
But anyhow, so I'm not sure why they left it there, but it's odd. I don't know if it's lower grade than what they were going for or something, but it doesn't. Hello, Jean-Francois. Could be David. I talked to iBreak for Bedrock, and he says that the Gold Bug 2 is more complicated. For a beginner, the Gold Monster will be a lot easier. A Gold Bug 2 is a metal detector, Jean-Francois, and both the Gold Bug 2 and the Gold Monster 1000 are pretty good detectors, but I have no idea how a Lobo skip track, super track compares with it. Have no idea. Big learning curve. That's correct, David. They said it's complex and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of experience. So that's where that's why I'm looking for a Gold Monster 1000. I don't have much experience and I don't have a lot of patience. So yeah. So anyhow, yeah, none of them are cheap. But as far as I know, none of the old mills and stuff are still extant. And all the old records from back then are currently sitting in storage over here at the Montana Historical Society while they build a new museum. So it makes it very, very annoying. Uh, well, I've had practice with that for many, many years, but not on a metal detector. If you have a lot of iron around, you want neither, huh? Yeah. Um, I think that would be a good starter machine for me for what I'm doing and my level of experience. I think that might work pretty well for me, Dave. What's the most affordable option for a pulverizing mill? Hammer, rotary grinding plane ball for small quantity samples and small batches of ore. Um, for small batches of ore, in the 1 to 25 kilogram range, they make a number of small impact mills. Hey, Rock, I need to talk to you a second about something. And they run 2 to 3,000, although they'd be pretty easy to make. Okay. And most of them are like chain mills, where you just have pieces of heavy chain flailing about. It's a form of a hammer mill. And they do a pretty good job on small scale like that, and they're pretty cheap. Mine doesn't use chains. The Stutenroth uses flat impactors. The one I designed also uses flat impactors. And it's, oh, really? How much are they, Brian? What does mean cheap? I think you can buy some for around the $2,000 to $3,000 range, but say you could make something like that. You just need an engine and a little short drive belt, basically, and a shaft with two pillow blocks, and then a piece of pipe, with a cover. And ooh, that would be way cool, Dave. Um, the owner of Eco Gold X owns a Chinese-made disc pulverizer. Disc pulverizers are very good for sample work because they're easy to clean. Uh, yeah, the thing is, a lot of these things can be pretty well converted to different motors or use an internal combustion engine for field work too. Jason's got it. What size are those, John? Yeah, and it depends on whether you have line power, whether you're running off a generator, Jean-Francois. If you got line power, electric makes more sense. If you have to use a generator, well, you've already got an engine involved in the thing there, unless you got other stuff. Yeah. That's pretty good. The Eco Gold X does a good job at dissolving. The trick is getting it out of the solution. We found a way that works right, and but you could directly cement it out to 12 and 8-inch, huh? Possibly. Let me write it down. MMBLC jaw crusher. Okay. I'd take him up on it, Jean-Francois. Anyhow, Rock, I have a situation we've run into, and the situation is thus. Side view. You have one ridge here. Well, that's a little steep. And actually, I got it the wrong way. Like this. You got the bedding like this, sedimentary bedding. In the sedimentary bedding, in the fault lines, and sometimes between the bedding, you have iron and gold mineralization. Now, looking top view, if here's one ridge, then you have a water course, then you have another ridge, okay? Down here, there's a zone, and the area that I could see well was way down here. It was 15 feet wide, and it was red, hematite red, sometimes orangey, more like a limonite orange, and it was very clay base. I mean, it was raining this weekend. As we were walking on it, it was just turning into clay and stuff. And so I was planning on sending you a short video of it and seeing what you think. I mean, it took 3 samples. Previous sampling showed low grade, if anything. There was 1.0, 1.03. But I don't know what kind of rock I'm looking at too well right there. It's definitely got a lot of clay-like characteristics at the present time. So anyhow, I was planning on sending that to you with what is it? There's one that's private and one that's restricted. I don't know, but anyhow, where you can post a YouTube video, but nobody can see it unless you send them the address. Yeah, the thing is this zone in here, all these hills have gold in them, you know. So that is interesting to me, that it's in an area of known gold deposits. Okay. So it seems, as I say, I was going to send you a video of that and ask for your input there in terms of what it looks like on surface and what do you think I should proceed at this point. but it's 15 feet wide and hundreds of feet long. My guess is, and I haven't very well followed it, but I mean somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 1,000 feet of surface strike along this zone here. And so I say it's definitely got some kind of mineralization potential, but what is the mineralization is a different story. I'm thinking it may be because very close to this water course, it may be the fault where these two blocks broke and tipped. You know, this fault right here. You know, that's my thought, is that may be what we're seeing because it's suspiciously close to the water course that runs between these two blocks. And so say that's kind of interesting. And I say that, who knows? It's kind of a low probability event, but it's worth checking out. When Eve and I were headed back from the trip today, we stopped at a local grocery store, and they were advertising they had huckleberries for sale. And I thought, ooh, that would be cool. Unfortunately, they only had them in the 1 gallon size. And anyone want to guess what 1 gallon of huckleberries costs? By the way, that's about 10 pounds. Okay. In case you're wondering. But let's see if anyone can come up with a good number there, because I can understand, because they're kind of hard to pick. Nobody's close yet. Rusty's the closest yet. $99 for a gallon of huckleberries. They look like good huckleberries. I mean, they were all ripe and like that. But wow, that's some pricey stuff.
And they have a really nice crabapple tree. We can take as many crabapples as we want.
No, Jean-Francois, they're related to blueberries, but they've never been able to cultivate them. They're wild. They tend to be in the higher elevations in the northern Rockies where we're at. And Rusty. Okay. But anyhow, they're very, very tasty. But they're small bushes and they're in ones. You know, they're not in clumps or anything. Nobody's ever been able to really cultivate them well.
To domesticate them.
Wow. And so it's just one of those things that the only way to get them is to go up on the mountains and pick them one at a time. You bet your bears like them too, Rusty. Let's see. Let me check this. There you go, John. Okay, John. Thank you. I'll see. It looks like Dave's got an interesting plan here. We may see something going on there.
What?
On metal detectors. Let's see. Basically, Dave was looking at a metal detector that if he bought one of those, they'd give him a gold monster for free. So we might be able to get it at a nice discounted price from them.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah. No, Jean-Francois, when you go up to the very top of the chat, you'll see it says Top Chat. When you click that, you get an option for live chat. Okay? Live chat shows you everything. Top Chat uses some magic of YouTube to discriminate against people. So let's say go up at the top of the chat column where it says top chat and click on that little down arrow, and then click on the live chat. And that's it. I'm looking at the same YouTube chat you are. Yeah, Rock, I say I have no clue, and the particular fluids that went in that particular fault at the particular time that I'm looking at is uh, potentially different from the other stuff. But yeah, so I'm really not sure what's happening here, but I'm sure you can give me some ideas as to what to look for. Do some, acid tests or whatever. It's pretty, um, weathered, pretty decomposed. I will as soon as I get it posted. We just got home like, what was it, 2 hours before live stream today, little one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have enough time to get it loaded. So as I say, we go ahead and get it up probably tomorrow. Yeah, let me write that down. And as I say, we'll take a look on that, and you can tell me what you think I should do in terms of further sampling and testing. Unfortunately, everything is a bit wet because of how much rain this weekend, so it'll be tougher to crush it to hand pan and stuff. Yes, I do, Rock. That's because I get home and put stuff on the thing. No, this was actually over near Montana B, David. We're going up to the mountain next weekend is the plan. I have no opinions at this point, Tricky. First, I got to do a few preliminary tests. First thing I do is typically take about a half a bucket, if reasonable to do so, then crush it and pulverize it and do a hand pan. At that point, if I can't find anything, it's usually pretty crappy. Okay. So if I find some, then the next step is to do a fire assay and go from there. Let's say we took 4 samples this trip, 3 from the actual vein and 1 from just some interesting rocks that were laying around. Yeah, an AA is not a field machine. It's a lab machine, Jean-Francois. Absolutely. It's to be set up in a controlled environment and kept there. But anyhow, so I took those 3 samples and I'll be crushing and panning those. And then depending upon what results we get is which ones go off for fire assay. And the other possibility is, depending on the size of the gold, just dissolve it, but then you have to worry about what kind of settling to clarify and stuff like that. Yeah, the problem with XRF is the signal to noise ratio. You have so little gold and so much other stuff. It's like trying to hear one person speak in a large crowded room. It's definitely a challenge when you're dealing with something that's valuable in such small quantities as gold. A decent ore grade is, depending upon what type. I mean, in your case, anything over 10 parts per million would be potentially interesting. Well, 10 parts per million, you got one voice being heard, trying to hear it, and 100,000 other voices. Very difficult to do. That is perfectly legitimate, Jean-Francois. The aqua regia is very common. Now, if you are using aqua regia to dissolve the gold in a sample, take care, Rock. You may have so many other things in the aqua regia that, again, the signal to noise ratio sucks. So you can take, and there's an organic chemical called methyl isobutyl ketone, which you then agitate with the aqua regia, let it settle out, and then you rinse the MIBK. Now, it really grabs the gold and doesn't hold other stuff nearly as well. And so you've now done an additional isolation of the gold and makes it a lot easier to check. Okay. So methyl isobutyl ketone, sure. It's a very standard procedure. Also called MIBK. And it's a good, no, it's more like an ether. I mean, it's pretty volatile stuff. Well, yeah, a letter can mean a lot, Jean-Francois. But yeah, it's good for separating gold chloride from other chlorides. And so say it's used in standard AA test for gold. You would digest the sample in aqua regia or the hydrobromic acid bromine. You convert the gold into a gold halide that then extracts into the MIBK. You wash the MIBK, get the other stuff out of it, and there you go. Does XRF work on fluids? As far as I know, it does, John, but you'd have to have enough in the fluid to make it work. And I don't think it works below a certain atomic number. Okay. I'm not sure what the atomic number is, but if the nucleus is too small, it doesn't really work. So this is why things like, oxygen and nitrogen don't really cause much to happen. But I'm not sure what that number is. Let's see. Tricky Dick says ICP. ICP has become more common. It used to be AA was the standard. Now it's ICP. Well, in a case like that, Jean-Francois, you're calibrating the instrument. These are called standards, and you make known concentrations with a fairly high precision, and then you take the equipment and you calibrate it against the standards. And that allows you to make sure the equipment is working properly. Say the XRF, as Rock said, it's good for percentages. It's not so good when you get into parts per million. Yeah, that's the thing, Jean-Francois. ICP stands for induction coupled plasma, and that's where you use an electric arc basically to vaporize the sample. Atomic absorption spectrophotometry, you use an oxyacetylene flame to vaporize the sample.
Wants an ICP.
Tough. But anyhow, the guy that we usually work with over here, he has an ICP. I think he said a good quality used AA should run you about 50 grand. A good quality ICP should run about 100 and a quarter. And if you want brand new, it's going to be at least twice that.
Since I can't have an ICP, can I have an AA, whatever the heck it is?
Only if you got 50 grand and a lab.
Well, I'm trying to get a lab.
But anyhow,
the great God scientist,
Brian Smith, he says, I want two.
Yeah.
So, as I say, that's basically how they work. The atomic absorption specifically works by you vaporize your liquid sample and you ionize the atoms, and as they deionize, they absorb energy, and you have actually, you're looking for gold, you use a gold lamp, a gold vapor lamp, and see how much it absorbs the gold light. Yes, the ICP mass spec uses mass spectrometry to do the final analysis. The ICP just vaporizes things. Yeah, I'm not very familiar with these things. I'm kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. I know a fair amount about a lot of things, not a whole lot about any one particular thing. It gives me different strengths and weaknesses than other people's. There was a science fiction story I read once by, I think it was A.E. Van Voigt. He postulated something called a nexialist. Hey, Red Wing. A nexialist is someone who knows, again, a lot about a lot of different things, and not a great deal, but enough about a lot of different things to where he can see where they cross and say, well, that applies to this, the nexus, you know? I'm not sure what the other one is. I think the ICP can either use emission spectroscopy or mass spectroscopy. Chris, do you know? I know there's two kinds of ICPs. And I think one's mass spec and the other is just spectroscopic. Do you know? But I say I think ICP can use either an emission spectroscopy for the analysis or mass spectroscopy. I think mass spectroscopy is more precise. But anyhow, that's what this guy that we use uses. And he seems to do a fairly good job. And yes, you could, Jean-Francois, you could use a digestion and then analyze the liquid. And digesting an Eco Gold X has the additional benefit of showing you how much is recoverable. When you do a digestion with Aqua Regia, assuming you do it correctly, for example, if it's limestone, you're going to need a little bit more. But it's going to digest stuff that the Eco Gold X might not. For example, it'll digest minerals away from the gold and then get to the gold. So by using the same process that you're planning to use as an extraction, you get effectively what you can recover, a recoverable grade, which is, in the end, what matters. It doesn't matter how much gold is in the rock. What matters is how much gold you can get out of the rock and how much does it cost you. And I remember one time in particular, a decade or two ago, I was getting a free subscription to, what was it? Mining Engineering, I think it was. And the there was a big company, I forget what it was, like Newmont or something like this, and they put a full page ad, and it said something equivalent of, we've got a mine with what would normally be a valuable grade ore, but it's real difficult. And if you can figure out a way we can process this ore and make a profit, we'll pay you 10 million bucks. And I thought, okay, it's unlikely I'm going to think of anything that people who read this magazine haven't, but I'll at least go to the website and take a look. And it's like, thought of that, didn't think of that, thought of that, didn't think of that, like that. And it's like, man, they have tried a lot. And one of the problems was the grade was such that normally it could have been profitably uh, processed. This particular stuff was like tightly encapsulated in silica to the point where you had to crush it to like 400 mesh to get a good recovery percentage. And just the crushing is enormously expensive to get it that fine, you know? So I say it's one of those things that it doesn't matter how much is in the rock. It matters how much it costs to get it out of the rock. Can you mine it? Like, if you have a vein this wide that's running 10 ounces to the ton, you're probably not going to be able to make money on it because it's just not enough of it. You're going to have a stripping ratio much wider than that. So your diluted ore grade, as they call it, will become much less. And so you got that, and then comes the extraction. Some things are real easy to work, some things not so much. I worked at a mine, the Chemgold Picacho mine, where all we had to do to heap leach was blast it. When we blasted that stuff, it came out 60% 3/16 minus. We got nearly 100% on a heap leach, which is kind of unheard of. You generally figure 60 to 75% is the range you're expecting out of a heap leach because you just haven't crushed it that well, so the gold is not that accessible to the solution. But that particular rock was just highly favorable. It worked out very well. Other places, it would have been just a waste of time. Hey, Maximus. I know the machine costs more. I know that this guy here spends a lot of times with standards. And I presume he needs to, or he wouldn't be doing it. He seems pretty conscientious and stuff, but yeah, you're not going to spend a lot of time making fresh standards and doing stuff like that if there's not a good reason for it, not in general. So, look at that little one, little piece. Yeah, okay. She is snackifying.
I found him a crunchy snack. They used to be peas. They used to be real food. They got turned into junk food that we can actually eat.
Yep. You have to pump it down to 10 to the minus 8 torr, huh? Yeah, it's a pretty good vacuum. Means a mechanical pump plus a turbomolecular. Forget about diffusion pumps. They're a real pain. Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to deal with stuff like that. I am.
Did you tell them
I'm not good at
the pack
nuance.
rats ate my towel?
No, I didn't tell them the pack rats chewed on your towel, And when Eva was in her little chair at the head frame, she has a towel there that she will hang to also keep the sun off and this sort of the other. And when we left for the night, we left the chair and the towel sitting out there. And that was when it was under the piece of steel, wasn't it?
I believe you had put it under the piece of steel.
Yeah, that was.
And Petey or Petunia or both.
Yeah, that was.
Done went and found.
That was at least 15 feet from the head frame too. No, Tricky. So anyhow, yeah, we have to be careful because we don't know what the pack rats are going to gnaw upon, and we don't want anything valuable getting damaged. So far, we haven't seen them terribly interested in extension cords, you know, and so that's something we have to be careful about. We have a lot of stuff we leave there. We just put in buckets with lids on it. So we haven't actually seen any pack rats recently. We've seen their sign.
Well, they stay away from where
We make too much noise. But how's the ladder rail working out? Well, it's working fine. Okay. The ladder track itself is easy to install, very stable, and once it's installed. And the carriage, the only negative on the carriage is that not in Keep Eva, Tricky.
Tricky had best not be advising that you do anything bad to Petunia and Petey.
And the little pack rats. But anyhow, so the ladder track works well. It's very stable, but the carriage, because I've got about a 60-degree slope, and so the carriage just sits there by its own gravity, and that's steep enough that it's really not hanging, it's not pressing against the ladder track real firmly, but it's the functionality is just fine. And how's it working out, Brian? See, we don't worry about dumping and this and that and the other because we're constantly moving stuff. I load it by hand deep where it's pretty tight. I figured it out just this weekend. My working area is about 30 inches by 8 feet. Okay. So that's, pretty confined to begin with. And then it's got to be hoisted to surface. Then it's got to be sent down to the level where we can get a vehicle to it. And it's only a quad. We can't even get a pickup truck there. And then haul it down the hill, then haul it from the camp all the way to the ranch. So as you can see, there's loading, transfer, 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 transfer. You got 5 transfers. So the method I've come up with on this small scale is just put it in 5-gallon buckets. I can get them off of the carriage pretty easy. And yeah, but how fast can you pick them up again, Brian? Okay. Can you do that on a quad? Can you send it 40 feet down a hill on a quad? You can dump that onto a quad. That's one hell of a quad. I say this is the sort of thing. There's so many transfers that's why I've done this. Would it be more efficient another way? Yeah. It would be a lot more expensive to get set up, and you'd have to have permits. It's that permitty thingy that can get really tricky. Yes, Jean-Francois, but no, the rubber will not cause a problem. They have big, giant industrial mills that are rubber lined. It minimizes the wear and tear. The 8-inch diameter is the problem. You don't get much weight. You can't use very big balls and stuff like that. And so only on a soft rock would that work well. And I say the same size thing, you can have a chain mill. And let me see. See if I can find a rock crusher. And let me go to Amazon. Let me see if I can get you a picture of one. There's Dolly Pots, electric hammer crushing small machine crushing rock stone crushing glass milling machine, 220 volts. That looks pretty nice. It looks like a laboratory one. It's got a drawer and a few other things in there. That's actually not bad. Wow. Little one. You might want to take a look at this one. Percentage jaw crusher. Here's a small jaw crusher. There we go. That's what I was thinking. Let's see. And Control C.
The fairy god scientist can bring me.
Okay. Control V. See if it'll want me to post that one. I might try clicking on that. Come on, enter. It's apparently not happy with that. Let's see. What's the name on it? It's $2,000. It's a 14 from 3-inch in feed. Better, I wouldn't give it a 3-inch feed. 6.5 horsepower, gas powered. Rockwell 58 hammers, $2,000. What's the K&M crusher? Okay.
Ooh.
See what I mean? So that's $2,000. That's not the one I was looking at. The one I was looking at was this one. Maximum input size, $7. The different screen sizes. There's your output tray. $1,000. 2.5 kilowatts at 220 volts. See what I mean? That's more of a laboratory. See, it's got this is covered, that's covered. You just close it.
The question is how easy is it to clean and how fine does it grind?
Well, see this? That's a cover. That allows you to open the hopper up so you could blow it out with air or whatever.
Well, how fine does it grind, though?
Well, it says it grinds it real fine.
I need it to like 100 mesh.
Will be 0.39 inch.
0.24 inch and 0.12 inch. So
these
not
are these
100
screens.
mesh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyhow. So let's see. Okay, the link was the problem there. Let's see. Okay. Where's the N? M crusher. Problem is, when you sit there and you try and There we go. Okay, here's a Control C. Here's a, wow, won't even let me get off. Control V. What do you mean? Control V. Wow, now it really doesn't want to be nice. Control V. There we go. There you go, Jean-Francois. There's a link that these guys make light duty crushers, but they're very inexpensive. And you could easily make a larger version tougher if you wanted to, using the same basically idea. Yeah, it's very, you can pick it up by hand. It's a small crusher. Doesn't do a lot of throughput, but for what you're looking at, step away for the keyboard.
Step away from the keyboard, I believe is what he is saying.
Was the face limiter. Another thing is you could pretty much do the same thing, except just make the chamber thicker wall. You know, shouldn't be too hard to accomplish. Thank you, Mr. Lodak. But I say that's about the simplest mill that should fill your needs. It should grind it pretty fine. You don't even need to have an output screen. Okay, you can just leave it in there and grind it up until it's really pulverized. You know. Yes, that's the fewer strings attached, the better in general. So say those are about the simplest thing. And I say it'd be really easy to make something similar too. But it's hard to. Now that the design that I built, which I can actually sell you the plans for $100. I think I've got another set of plans here somewhere.
Well, you can always get another set of plans.
I thought I had a set of plans.
Yeah.
Where are they? No. And I know I had another set of plans somewhere. Now the question is, where did I put those rascals? They could always print some up, but
Oh yeah.
that was the purpose of having them already printed, was so that. Ooh, that looks possible. Yeah, there we go. Where's all the diagrams? Oh, there they are. See, I made a set of plans for my impact mill. It does about 200 pounds an hour, about 90% passing 60 mesh, and
it has dust control.
And it blows the output out so that you can feed a tank or something like that with that. Yeah, you could then split it and grind down to 2 to 300 mesh. Yeah, it's as a mine. I If you go back on some of my previous videos, uh, uh, hi Patrick. Um, you can see me using it and such. And let's say you know, I think it's got great potential. There's a few weaknesses. I'd go with a larger shaft and bearings. What is with this? Goodness gracious. Yeah, doing the actual design gets a little complicated because everything affects everything else. The other thing, the mine is specifically designed to use hard facing to minimize wear of components, because if you have a rotor that's swinging like this, that edge is where the wear occurs mostly. It's not down here, it's right there. And so I've created the chamber and the rotor specifically to have edges that can be easy easy to hard face. You familiar? Well, I don't use change. I use flat impactors. And I just basically, this one here, I went and to the local guy that had a plasma cutter and just had him cut it all out of T1 steel, 1/4 inch uh, steel plate, and just plasma cut all the parts and then just welded them together. It took us, what, 3 days?
Yeah,
Me and Jim.
probably could have been quicker, but
So you built one, Tricky? Sweet. You were mill for a longer time. We'll grind to 150 minutes. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Yeah. Um, Especially if you can build it out of a harder steel plate. No, yeah, no, mine's belt drive. Yeah. Another thing that, especially on a larger device, that would come in handy would be um, a tensioning pulley, a manually tensionable pulley, so that you can start it not under load and then engage it. That's pretty simple technology. I don't think so, Tricky. I don't recall seeing them. I thought I would. Um, yeah, that would be cool. Jean-Francois? Tricky may send me a video. Do I have permission to forward it to Jean-Francois? Anyone ever modified a 2-inch wood chipper as a hammer mill? Not I. I come from the desert. We're more likely to be chipping rocks than wood. But yeah, I think it was we had like 5 people that got those plans. Surprised. I thought I had a complete set that was already compiled. That's the master sheets there. Not there. Pretty sure it's not in here. Yeah, those are the master. Oh, I know what I can do. I can also go down. They keep those files at the print shop too. They said I could go down there and make more copies just by telling them. So, okay, Jean-Francois, why don't you email me and we'll discuss it in some more details. Um, the materials cost for me, and that includes um, having somebody machine plasma cut the all the parts, was, I believe, around $1,600 for all the parts. And I say it cost quite a bit to buy. Uh, it was a full sheet of quarter-inch T1 steel, and then have a plasma cut. I think that was like $800 right there. Hey, Mr. Virtue. Yeah, I understand, Tricky. You might have, well, it's almost certain you made some modifications that are better than mine was, you know, because whenever two relatively intelligent people go about doing the same kind of project, but without too much confinement intellectually, somebody always thinks of something the other guy didn't. It's pretty much a guarantee. But yeah, I know I sold some to, I don't think it was Ned, might have been Ned, but there was somebody else there.
It was someone in Australia because we had real Australian.
Yeah, we had,
food.
yeah, what's the guy's name too? He just commented on a video not too long ago of mine. He always uses a very unusual way of speaking.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It's not Ned. But anyhow, that's I say so. I say that's that particular thing. Now it's not that great for sampling because you got to pull it apart and blow it out. But for small scale production testing, it works fine. Let's say if you want to crank out, 200 pounds an hour for a half a shift or a shift to put a tank, put a charge in a tank or something, it works fine. For sampling, that little K&M crusher should be able to get you, or a similar type thing with just an end plate that you can pull off without even a screen. Um, that should do a relatively decent sized charge in one go, probably 3 to 5 pounds at a batch. You just drop it in there and just let it run until it's pulverized, which doesn't take very long at all. Then open it up and dump it. Or you could use a screen and then figure the. Another problem you have to watch out for, though, is if you're making a lot of dust, not only is it a health hazard, but you're also losing part of your sample. You're using the most fragile part of the sample. The stuff that's most easily turned to dust is preferentially blowing away. No, it's $1,600 in parts. Yeah, I would go with the K&M for now, or a similar sort of thing. But K&M, and just do small batches. If you said you were doing 1 to 25 pound, 1 pound will just fit in there and grind up. And so you can probably do about 4 or 5 pounds at a whack, and just let it beat it to death. Hey, Dee Dee, haven't seen you in a while. How you doing? And so, say that's for what your size was talking about. That's pretty good. And then once you see how it's put together, if you need something a little bigger or a little tougher, it would be easy to fabricable something locally there without. It's a fairly simple device. The negative there that I can see is the chamber itself is pretty thin wall. And so it's going to wear out fairly quickly, but it's the sort of thing that should be pretty easy to build a thicker wall chamber. Yeah, John, I can understand that. Let me get a drink of water here. I'll be right back in an instant. Well, not an instant, but just a few seconds. Okay, we're going to go there, Chris? We're going to go there? Huh? Huh? uh, so, anyhow, yeah, I say that the K&M should do what you need it to do pretty well, Jean-Francois. It's off the shelf. And if it does what you want, just doesn't last too long, it'd be really easy to fabricable a more durable chamber out of local materials. I'm sure shouldn't be a problem at all. Just get some good heavy wall pipe. So shouldn't be a problem. Oh, let's see what else. I put something up there. Rain, red zone. Okay, I got those. Eva was talking about something today. Well, a K&M will probably do that too, John. She was talking today about something, and it was how unusual, how it is that so many people. Did you? Oh, it was amazing, Honey Bunny. Just amazing. You wouldn't believe it. Luckily, you can watch the replay. Nothing real exciting, no, Honey Bunny. But she was mentioning how a lot of people don't seem to understand how to motivate productivity from people. And it's interesting to me. Now, mining is a business where productivity, David says, bless you,
Thank you,
is critical. So is agricultural work. And then in these fields, you always find piecework sort of incentives. Now, at the underground mine I worked, there was always contract. There's, if you were hauling, if you were mining, if you were there's a piecework incentive there. How many tons did you haul? How many, feet of advance did you make? How many rock bolts and mesh did you put up? Things like that. And that gets the right kind of person to really move. And if it doesn't, it's not the right kind of person. And so I used to work at a mine, and we had a target, forget how many thousand tons a month. I'll say 125,000. I think that was it, but I may be wrong. It's plausible. And so getting 125,000 a month tons a month didn't give us any bonus money. But after 125,000, we started getting a significant increase in pay. Not a big increase. Just like in your paycheck, you might have an extra 50 or 100 bucks. And it was amazingly effective at getting people motivated. More so than I would have anticipated. Because you worked hard to get out of that 125,000 dead zone. And then you worked because you're getting paid according to the load now. Wow, we're making bonus. It was really fascinating how that works. And then you have other people who think that yelling at you will get you to move quicker. Only while you're standing there,
Or people
you
that
know?
will call you out and publicly humiliate you in front of your coworkers because that's supposed to motivate you.
Yeah.
The beatings will continue until morale improves.
Yep.
Yep.
And so I say it was just amazing how many people don't seem to, get the idea that, if you want people to work hard, you got to give them some reason to work hard. It may be monetary, it may be psychological, but something, you know. Yeah, there was one time I, I did that was inappropriate. You know, um, if you're yelling, you've lost control, and that is not a good look. Um, now, this was a safety violation. It was, and you know, I was driving a 50-ton haul truck, and the other guy ran me off of the road. Luckily, I was able to stop before I hit the wall, literally. You know, but yeah, he we were at lunch, and I said, you know, apparently there's a problem because I was showing this new truck driver what we were doing there, um, and Gerald ran me off of the road there. So, who's got the right of way under what conditions here? And he said, well, we didn't have a problem until you got behind a wheel. And that was not the right thing to say to me in that frame of mind. But anyhow, and so things got a little out of it. Would have been much better for me to say, Gerald, go over to the office and wait there for me. You know, and Fred, you're driving his truck, and after lunch we'll get everything going, and then I'll see you there, Gerald. you know, but I didn't. I lost my cool, and therefore I lost my superior status there for that thing. Uh, Jimmy, we've got some gold sitting over there at the ranch, waiting to be smelted down, and we think there's more in the resin that's currently in the stripper, but I think we ran out of thiourea in the solution, so we put some in before we left, and things had just been sitting there with the electrolytic cell out and cleaned and dried. So next time we're at it, I presume tomorrow's going to be Aaron's, is what I see, little one, right? I don't see us getting out the ranch tomorrow. Yeah, it'll be Wednesday. You know, culture is very different. Absolutely, Jean-Francois. Different cultures are very different, and to be an effective leader, one has to intuitively understand the culture that you're dealing with. Um, some groups are best led from in front, others are best, yelled and screamed at. Say, where I was at, that was the wrong answer. You know. Hmm. Yeah, I don't remember who that was, Honey Bunny. But I say in that particular case, it was counterproductive. I could have probably had him fired. You know, that would have made the point a lot better. Time off without pay would have made the point just fine, I'm sure. But that was also a case where the management of that company was very annoying too. There's a rule about yelling at the boss. You have to be right. Why was it hard to get anything done, Maximus? Um, let's say they seem to be a relatively productive country, but I've never been there. Okay, honey bunny. Uh, Lack of structure. You mean nobody knows who's in charge and stuff like that?
I don't say uncontrolled anarchy personally.
Well, I think the controlled is what Maximus is averring was lacking there. There was just anarchy.
Yeah. Well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with anarchy either if everybody at least understands the goal.
Well, is Jim mining or working? I'm really not sure, Jimmy. I think he's working at Bryce's mine right now, but I really don't know.
Doing some confidential stuff.
Honey Bunny says Indians work more organically and less hierarchically.
Yeah.
Maximus says it's hard to describe. Yeah, micromanaging bosses.
Well, it could be worse. It could be power mad drama queens.
I don't know.
Really?
I really don't know what Jim is doing. Haven't heard from him in a couple of weeks. So I have no idea.
It's top secret confidential stuff. It probably has to do with TV people.
Apparently it's above my pay grade. Yep. Jean-Francois says, everyone for anarchy, with me as your chief. It's amazing how often that happens, isn't it? Oh, it reminds me.
Well, you can tell Jean-Francois that the goddess is automatically in charge everywhere anyway.
Jean-Francois, the goddess, begs to differ. She is obviously going to be the one in charge.
I am always in charge, everywhere. I'm just smart enough to make sure that I shove all the work.
I have noticed that, Jimmy. There are people who will work harder at not working than the job was. Just do the damn job and it would have been simpler. The quietest miner is the one finding the most gold. Sometimes that is correct. That's for certain, Jean-Francois. But yeah, it's interesting in different cultures how different things are done. You know, what in some cultures might be you kept telling staff to add more glucose, for example, and they would never do it. Okay. Here's one thing that I found that seemed to work pretty well in a particular case. I had an employee, this is when I was doing the kettle corn, and he liked to bring the truck back with less than a quarter tank of gas in it. Okay. Because he didn't want to take the time to get the gas. Now, the problem is that truck, I'd actually had it run out of gas at a quarter tank, just below a quarter tank before on the gauge. So this meant if I get in the truck and it's got less than a quarter tank and I got to go do something, I got to go by the gas station first. Okay. So I told him, I said, no, you can't do that. Didn't make any difference. So then I said, okay, here's the dealio. Next time you bring that truck back with less than a quarter tank, I give you one warning. The time after that, it's $25 out of your paycheck. The time after that, and this was in a 6 month period. The next time in a 6 month period that you run out of gas, it's $50 out of your paycheck. And it'll keep escalating. I find him one time, $25, that was it. That got it in his head, you know. And so sometimes it's something like that that will work. I don't know. I mean, you sit there and you tell them, look, this is the procedure. If you don't want to do the procedure, I'm not going to pay you. Do you think that would have worked? I have no idea. Oh dear, I see something shiny in the background. Oh.
Hi, everybody. What a wonderful weekend. Pro tip for all y'all. When you go out and you're sitting there in the field quietly getting soaked, when you get back to wherever you are, put the layer of highly insulating waterproof shit on over your wet clothing. This actually works very well because I spent the entire rest of the day sitting on top of that hill, patiently operating the winch, and I was perfectly fine. Not hypothermic at all. Now, normally, I probably would have taken the time to change, but it's kind of hard to change if all of your spare clothes are like 60 miles away, you know. Just saying. Hi, David. Hi, Chris. Hi, Kodak. Woohoo. Yeah, actually, Mr. Virtue, other than it being a little bit on the chilly side, once the gale force winds that kept me from even hearing him when he was yelling at me from down there, once the gale force wind stopped, it was a really nice weekend. We had these nice clouds and occasional mist rolling in and the beautiful smell of green growing things and the soft rain and hard rain at night when we were trying to sleep. So, it was really cool. You know? No lightning and thunder, no lightning and thunder at all, Kodak. It was great. Hi, honey bunny. But yeah, it is indeed true. Now, my grandmother had always said that. She said, put the slickers and the waterproof stuff on right over your wet clothes as soon as possible, and you'll be fine. If she had been around, she also would have given me a couple of bread bags to put in my feet last week when my shoes were all waterlogged, which they weren't this week. So there was that. It was actually a very nice weekend. He found some very old pieces of skeleton that are probably a cow. I'm going to ask my friends on Reddit exactly what they are. We got things done. And when we got home, I saturated my shoes with more of that camp dry stuff because that camp dry stuff actually does work on cloth. I was happy about this. Now I got to get a new towel. In the meantime, this has been a blessedly quiet news week, apparently. I mean, we're absolutely ignoring the huge, devastating, ridiculous, and utterly, completely bullshit disaster going on in Maui. Yeah. The media seems to be kind of ignoring the bad side of that. The local people in Maui, one of their media newspapers down there, was really pissed off. They're getting more pissed off by the day because they keep getting stonewalled by their local government. I mean, we're going to draw a curtain of charity around that diversity hire they had in charge of disasters down there that said that conversations surrounding water use and allocation need to involve discussions of equity or some equal bullshit. The time to have discussions regarding the racial and equity aspects of water use is not in the middle of a serious fire. Just saying. It should also be noted that apparently the Maui County Water Control and Emergency and Health Department type people are blasting all over Instagram that even if you have life straws and Sawyer straws and things of that nature to purify water, sorry, they ain't going to do a damn bit of good. You can't purify the water and drink it anyway. End of story. You apparently will die because of all the chemicals. Of course, they're not addressing exactly what the people who don't have water should do otherwise. But, well, I mean, you can't expect the government to address everything. The goddess is a big fan of desalination. Just saying, desalination probably works, you know. And yes, water is sacred, people are not. Yep. As a matter of fact, Kodak, the craziest part about the whole thing was this dude, the diversity hire, is an indigenous person who had his entire education on Hawaii, including his college degree in racial studies and everything else, and has zero experience whatsoever with any form of emergency management, went into a beautiful and inspiring speech on that video about how the indigenous people worshiped water as though it was a god, and how we need to move back to that as part of this larger conversation on the equity issues surrounding the use of water in an emergency. So there was that. The goddess was looking in askance at this video. So were a lot of people down in Maui, for that matter. There is much to be discovered yet in exactly how that colossal fuck up occurred. The goddess sincerely hopes that some of the things that are being talked about in the tinfoil hat community by persons who live down there prove not to be true, because it's like really not good. Just saying. Well, of course, Jean Francois. Why in the world would you need competency and hands on experience? If you have enough buzzwords and a good enough AI to write your resume, you're like totally set, dude. I mean, really. Just ask me. I'm a scientist. Totally and completely. Wouldn't surprise me, nauseous. All kinds of weird stuff down there. Honey, they were trying to claim that activated carbon filtration plus RO was no guarantee that this water could be made safe because of the benzenes and gasolines and all the other E's and E's that got into it from the firefighting. Which is why the goddess was looking at the fact they're surrounded by a freaking ocean, and if you can set up a distillation device of any kind, then use the seawater. Forget the whole land thing for the moment, you know. Just saying. Yeah, they do want the property. And yes, I do agree that they were probably fear mongering on a lot of it. But it does have a whole lot of people worried. Ha! Now, this is an interesting note. So much for all this great economy stuff. BHP logs the lowest annual profit in 3 years and sees slower growth. Nice picture of a haul truck. BHP Group on Tuesday reported its lowest annual profit in 3 years and warned that lag effects of higher interest rates would impact growth in the developed world in the coming financial year, with demand supported by India and China. BHP also warned inflationary pressures would continue to impact its business in fiscal 2024, with the cost of mining estimated to be above pre-pandemic levels. Well, no shit, Sherlock. In the near term, while the outlook for the developed world is uncertain, we expect China and India to remain relative sources of stability for commodity demand, the world's largest listed miner said. Over the past year, prices for iron ore, BHP's top revenue generating commodity, retreated from peaks for over the past 2 years owing to headwinds facing China's economy, while surging costs and a tight labor market in Australia also crimped earnings. As a result, the company's underlying attributable profit for the year, ended June 30th, fell to 13.42 billion with a B from 21.32 billion with a B a year ago, missing a definitive estimate of 13.89 billion with a B. BHP declared a final dividend of 80 cents per share, down from $1.75 per share a year ago, equivalent to a 59% payout. Ooh, that was down from expectations by Macquarie analysts of a 65% payout. Ooh. Okay. The goddess thinks that we may be seeing the beginning of, what do they call that? Demand collapse? Something along those lines. Quite odd. This is not the only mining company to state that there are going to be rising all-in sustaining costs in the coming year. It's also not the only mining company to show falling revenues at the moment, and it's not the only mining company to talk about lower demand across the board. Things are getting a little bizarre. And in other bizarre and unaccountable news, here in little old Helena, we are now within 30 cents of the difference between regular gasoline and diesel becoming inverted. Okay, at the moment, our regular gasoline is $3.99 a gallon, and diesel is $4.29 a gallon. And red dye diesel is actually below the price of regular gasoline. Whenever the diesel is cheaper than the regular gasoline, the economy is going to do something very, very strange. So do watch that, people. Ecuadorians opt to restrict oil and mining ahead of runoff vote. Ecuadorians voted to shut a major oil field in the Amazon region and ban new mining concessions near Quito, sending a clear message to the next government on prioritizing environmental protection over natural resource development. With about 93% of votes counted Monday, 59% favored closing the Ishpingo Tambocha Tiputini field run by Petroecuador in a national park. Hmm. The goddess can see the logic here, actually. Separately, most voters in Quito chose to cease the granting of mineral permits in 6 parishes northwest of the capital. 2 polls were part of Ecuador's snap election on Sunday. Hollywood stars like Leonardo DiCaprio and Mark Ruffalo took to social media to promote closing the oil field as a contribution to a shift away from fossil fuels and to protect the Yasuni National Park's wildlife, including jaguars, giant otters, and macaws. Closing oil production elsewhere in the park wasn't on the ballot. The results offer the winner of October's runoff presidential vote between entrepreneur Daniel Noboa and socialist candidate Luisa Gonzalez a clearer idea of public sentiment toward raw material extraction. Ecuador's next leader will have to weigh that alongside economic considerations. Hmm, the socialists could make things go very badly in that case. Ouch. Officials have warned the cost of the shutdown to the budget will be 1.2 billion with a B in the near term and 16 billion with a B over the life of the field into the early 2040s. In Quito, 68% of voters favored banning new concessions for mines in an area covering 6 of the capital district's parishes, known as the Andean Choco, home to toucans and spectacled bears. Existing concessions won't be affected, according to an earlier court ruling. And here it sounds like we have yet another case of NIMBY, not in my backyard. One has to wonder if the particular habitats in question were not so close to the capital, and if there weren't Holly weirdos involved in this equation, how this would have shaken out. NIMBY is by and large something the goddess highly disapproves of. Hecla says production impacted at Idaho mine after fire incident. Mm-hmm. Hecla Mining said on Monday production at its Idaho mine was hit after it suspended operations following a fire incident, sending the shares of the largest U.S. silver miner down over 8%. The company said a fall of ground incident occurred in one of the shafts at its Lucky Friday mine, where repair works were underway. A fall of ground involves a collapse of a part of the mine shaft or tunnel roof or walls crumbling. No personnel were in the mine at the time of the failure, Heckler said, adding it was working on a plan to resume production and would update 2023 outlook once that happens. A prolonged shutdown of operations at Lucky Friday following the ground fall and fire at the number 2 shaft could materially impact 2023 guidance within the mine, accounting for about 30% of our 2H23 consolidated EBITDA forecast, said analytics at RBC Capital Markets. While management is working on a remediation plan, we expect the issue will further pressure near term free cash flow generation, analysts added. Shares of the company fell to $4.18 in morning trading. While the goddess very seldom actually recommends a stock, the goddess is very much a fan of Hecla mining. Hecla is one of the oldest, if not the oldest, publicly traded mine of its type on the stock markets. A large percentage of the assets that they control and work are patented, privately owned land. They try very hard when adding new assets to their portfolio not to add things that belong to the federal government. They also, when it comes to writing mine reports, tend to have a very conservative outlook when they estimate costs. They estimate them higher than they think they're going to be. When they estimate outlook, they take it on the lower end of the scale. And most of their mining reports that are put out, even for their investors' consumption, are not all sales words and bullshit. They're actually pretty good mining reports. So the goddess does hope that they get Lucky Friday up and running again quite soon. Very nice property, Lucky Friday is. Excellent. Victoria Gold returns to normal operations at the Eagle Mine after Yukon wildfire evacuations. Yeah, it turned out that one of the things that absolutely was not mentioned hardly anywhere in the news in the last week was the fact that, like, the entire town of Yellowknife and a whole large section of various people in Canada had to relocate somewhere because of gigantic fires. That kind of has escaped a lot of the public attention. So, Victoria Gold reported on Monday the Eagle Gold Mine in the Yukon has resumed operations, having weathered the impacts of wildfire activity in the Canadian Territory with the help of the Yukon Wildland Fire Management Team. On July 30th, the company reported a partial evacuation of the Eagle Mine site due to the proximity, approximately 4 kilometers, of the East McQuestion wildfire, leaving only a volunteer contingent of employees, brave folks, nearby to operate and maintain critical operational assets. A second evacuation occurred on August 4th. A total of 335 people were evacuated off the Eagle Mine site, either to Banyan Gold's exploration camp nearby, the Silver Trail Lodge, or into Whitehorse. By then, the fire was about 60,000 hectares in size, approaching the mine from the southwest. Since then, favorable conditions have allowed for the return of employees to the site, Victoria stated in Monday's press release. Full production rates at operation were resumed on August 11th, and Yukon Wildland Fire Management demobilized from Eagle 2 days later. Separately, the evacuation order for the village of Mayo was lifted on August 13th, and the company has reestablished the normal supply chain and crew change logistics, Victoria said. We're pleased operations have returned to normal. Rainy conditions over the past week significantly reduced the wildfire risk near Eagle, Victoria Gold CEO John McConnell said in a news release. We'd like to thank our employees and contractors for their excellent response to the situation, which allowed a smooth restart of production. The Yukon Wildland Fire Management Team provided a comprehensive professional response to the East McQuestion fire, for which we are grateful. Victoria's Eagle Mine is an open pit heap leach gold operation located about 275 kilometers east of Dawson City. It's the only producing gold mine in the Yukon, having begun commercial productions in 2020. Shares of Victoria Gold were up 0.9% by 12:15 p.m. in Toronto, giving the company a market capitalization of $443 million Canadian. Isn't it sad and rather odd that this is the only operating gold mine in the Yukon, which is an extraordinarily rich gold territory? Just saying. The goddess finds that sad and odd, but she is glad that no one has died and that they're back to work. That is always a good thing. So let's take a look at what else we have going on around here. Let's see here. Can gold and silver ever return to circulation? Oh, we already answered that question last week. And I believe they're wrong, of course. Gold miners' pain may be bullion investors' gain. Let's see what this is all about here. Despite the ongoing summer slump in the precious metals markets, gold prices are still up close to 5% for the year. While not much to boast about in itself, a modest gain is infinitely better than a loss, which is what holders of gold mining stocks are taking. The flagship VanEck Gold Miners ETX, which holds a basket of majors including Newmont, Barrick, and Agnico Eagle, is down 4% year to date. Wow, ouch. It's a continuation of a long term trend of underperformance. Since its inception in 2006, GDX has delivered a dismal total return of minus 16%. Over that same period, spot gold prices have gained a stellar 200%. And people wonder why the goddess doesn't recommend stocks. The goddess will say when it comes to stocks, only buy the ones with dividends. Just saying. It's not even close. The difference in performance reflects the fact these are entirely different asset classes. Even though gold stocks and gold bullion both attract investors who are bullish on spot prices, only the metal itself is sure to gain in a bull market for gold. Mining stocks are capable of delivering outsized returns in the right conditions. But unfortunately for investors, the mining sector's woes seem to persist year after year. At the core of the problem for gold majors is rising production cost and declining production volume. Higher outputs boost operating cash flows, which helps fund mine expansions, builds, and purchases, fueling virtuous circles of growth. Mining more gold also produces profitability, lowering unit costs by spreading big fixed operational expenses across more ounces. But most of GDX's biggest gold miners continue to suffer shrinking output. That includes the mighty Newmont, Barrick Gold, Newcrest Mining, Gold Fields, Anglo Gold Ashanti, Kinross Gold, and Endeavour Mining. Together commanding almost 3/8 of the GDX's total weighting, these seven huge gold miners produced 4,866,000 ounces last quarter. Ominously, that plunged 8.9% year over year, a serious drop for most of the world's biggest gold miners. Hamilton notes all-in sustaining costs for the largest gold miners are soaring at an annual rate of 7.7%. The mining industry is financially unsustainable at the current spot prices for metals. The only thing that will turn the fortunes around and incentivize exploration and development of new mines is higher market prices for what it produces. It's true that some smaller operators are faring better in this environment than the majors. And as usual, royalty and streaming companies are outperforming, thanks to their superior business models, scams, which avoid most cost inflation and operational risks because they take their revenue right off the top. Well, they're no shit, Sherlock. Skim the cream? Well, yeah, that's going to leave everybody else fighting over skim milk, and that's a little bit rude. It's also true global gold production from all sources has not actually shown an annual decline. But amid growing demand for metals, supply deficits loom for gold, silver, platinum, and palladium. The more pain the mining industry suffers, the bigger those deficits are likely to be. The same forces that threaten to bankrupt mining companies paint a hugely bullish long term picture for physical precious metals markets. It's all about supply and demand. When gold and silver bull markets do resume in earnest, shares of well positioned miners will undoubtedly go up as well. Some may even deliver explosive gains, but history shows that run ups in the mining sector tend to be fleeting. At the end of the day, a mining stock is a financial asset. Its performance depends heavily on factors such as management acumen, the regulatory environment, sentiment on Wall Street, and cost for capital, labor, and energy. The actual mined and refined product, physical bullion, carries none of these business risks. An ounce of gold is money itself. As such, it can be expected to retain its purchasing power over the longest of time frames more reliably than any financial asset. Absolutely. Companies may come in gold. Gold and silver last forever here. Inflation is a giant skim on the American people. More accurately, inflation is a stealth tax and it is a feature of all fiat currencies, not a bug. If you or anybody you know still believes that A, inflation is viewed as a bug by our government, and B, our government is actually capable of doing something about it, well, bless your heart. All the goddess can say about such people is, I hope to hell that you were beat by the stupid stick before you ate the fruit of the idiot tree. Just saying. I mean, really now, come on, folks. The price of a McDonald's hamburger in the United States has inflated 3.75% annually over the last 70 years. A more accurate index is the Costco hot dog combo. I haven't been to Costco yet. This I'm not going to Costco again until the Social Security check comes in. But the day I see that combo over $1.50, I will know it's the end of the world. Okay, just saying. McDonald's has grown from a tiny hamburger stand in Des Plaines, Illinois, to the second largest fast food chain on earth. Now the goddess is wondering what the largest fast food chain on earth is. Just saying. Scale economies alone, never mind process and productivity, should have allowed the price of a burger to decline materially over this period. Why didn't it? What forces and institutions have conspired to inflate the cost of a simple meal by more than 13 times over 2 generations? Many Mises Wire readers know the answer, but few Americans are economically astute enough to understand or describe what Vladimir Lenin himself called the surest means of overturning the existing basis of society. Simply put, inflation is a giant scheme perpetrated in a symbiosis of money creation by bankers and government affiliated central bank bureaucrats, the two institutions with the power to create money from nothing. Spoiler alert, they ain't creating money anymore, haven't for decades. They're creating currency. Functional, huge difference. Okay? Just saying. Inflation creates a nice, cushy existence for each group, and the bankers and bureaucrats always get their money. If steady price deflation were operative, as is the case in a properly functioning consumer economy, where productivity improvements flow into lower consumer prices, the world would be quite different today and far more difficult for bankers and bureaucrats. And this is true because back just before Richard M. Nixon decoupled us from the gold standard, back in 1964, a gallon of gasoline, regular gasoline, cost 30 cents in most parts of the United States. That was the average at about this time of the year. Now, that was in 90% silver money. Well, if you want to get exact, it was in, a 90% quarter plus a nickel, which, unless it was a war nickel, had no silver at all. So we will just, for the purpose of illustration here, call it 25 cents a gallon for the gas, for the actual silver. Right now in Helena, Montana, if I were to go to my local store, my local coin shop, and buy a 90% quarter, it's going to cost me $5. So if I could pay for gas in the value of silver that we have now, that quarter, friends and neighbors, would cover the cost of a gallon of gas with a little bit, probably a few cents change back. That is what natural money in a natural deflationary market does. Bankers and governments don't like this because it's like really hard to kind of have a free lunch this way. Just saying. With steadily falling prices, bankers must do proper credit analysis. They must set aside ample reserves and run their institutions more conservatively. Credit analysis is far more difficult in deflation, as borrowers must continuously sell more goods to service their loans rather than relying on boosting prices. Secured loans become problematic as pledged assets devalue. Banking generally becomes a lot more work and more risky. The period of 1865 to 1910 in the United States is a perfect example of this sort of environment. Record bank failures and enormous financial volatility accompanied steady deflation and one of the greatest periods of economic prosperity and innovation in our nation's history. In short, deflation creates risks for banks. We're going to circle back to that one in a minute here. So banks conspire with the government to create enough money so they don't have to deal with it. The balls to the wall and heads I win, tails you lose practices we've become familiar with in banking today are allowed and inspired by the permanent inflationary regime. The other major inflation conspirator and greatest beneficiary is the government. Think of inflation as oxygen for politicians and carbon monoxide as a public vote cast to raise taxes. Steady 2%, say, for example, inflation creates a reliable ratcheting effect on every taxpayer in the land and a nice, smooth, foamed runway for bureaucrats. And should our benevolent leaders decide the inflation tax runway isn't wide enough or smooth enough, they simply borrow the difference and inflate away that too. Inflation created by central banks allows governments to always have the money it wants. No, to always have the currency it wants. The goddess is going to write an email to Mises again and point out to them they know damn well it ain't money, it's currency. Okay? And be first in line to get it. If deflation were operative, as would be the case in a properly functioning economy where productivity improvements flow into lower prices, government would have to explicitly tax instead of relying on inflation to drive revenue and devalue old debt. Politicians' careers would be much, much shorter. Don't threaten me with a good time. Just saying. In summary, there's a reason deflation rarely, if ever, happens. Inflation makes bankers and bureaucrats' lives easier and keeps them in power. The cost of a simple hamburger would be far lower without ever expansive government and the willful destruction of our money. But it will never happen as long as bankers and bureaucrats work in perfect symbiosis to execute a massive skim on the American people. And that comes off the Mises.org website. Be sure to check them out because they actually understand economics for the most part. And the goddess will enlarge upon this theme. The current paradigm embraced by economists and the teachers of economics for the last several decades, well, the last couple of generations since the great coup of 1913 to 1917. Okay, there was a great coup in there. You guys missed it. The current paradigm says that a deflationary economy is disastrous. It's civilization ending. It's climate change and COVID and racism and transphobia and everything else all mixed together, even worse, okay? It's worse than Donald Trump winning the presidency ever. That is how scared these people are of deflationary economies. But the truth is, the reason they're worried about deflationary economies is because it's really damn difficult to get a free lunch in one. Okay? Now, your average human being sees that particular environment, the environment of 1865 to 1910, when we had zillions of bank failures, but the average person was living in a period of unparalleled prosperity. That's because banks see things differently than sane people do. Okay? Had the banks followed the basic rules of money, including rule number one, there ain't no such thing as free lunch. If the banks had followed the basic rules of sound money, then they would not have failed. The failures come from greed and wanting a free lunch. Okay? And the greed ties back to what Yo-Yo and I were talking about earlier today when we were talking about work, because The conversation arose in the first place out of people discussing a living wage. The average human being out there in the world of Reddit and other social media apparently is unaware that what constitutes a living wage is very, very much location dependent. A living wage in Boston, Massachusetts is going to be significantly different and a hell of a lot higher than a living wage in Helena, Montana. Even worse, it depends on what to you constitutes necessities, needs versus wants. Maslow's hierarchy of needs says you need food, you need shelter, you need clothing, okay? You need four walls and a roof and some random amount of climate control. You don't need a McMansion. You don't need a brand new townhome. You don't need a luxury apartment with three bedrooms, two baths in a gated community. You need four walls, a roof, and very minimal climate control. Like the old adobe hovel we lived in Tucson that had no central air conditioning and no heat in Tucson, Arizona. And the entire house when we moved in there was running on 160 amp electric circuit. Yeah, that was a house, a basic house on a quarter acre lot in downtown Tucson. Okay? And this is the problem. Is you got all these people who are saying, well, the government has to make minimum wage $15 an hour because $7.25 an hour nobody can live on. When you ask these people, do you know anybody who earns $7.25 an hour? No, they don't. Do you know anybody who earns even close to $7.25 an hour? No, they don't. But they are convinced that huge swaths of Americans are starving to death on $7.25 an hour. When you look at the government statistics, as inaccurate as those liars tend to be, on this one they're actually accurate. It turns out that significantly less than 2% of the American population actually earns the federal minimum wage on paper of $7.25 an hour. It turns out the vast majority of these people work in farming or agriculture where the $7.25 an hour is the cash, the fiat portion of their pay. They also get room and board, and in some room, and in some cases board, and in some cases internet. Like one of our local friends who could not find miners last year, though he was paying $1,000 a week plus room and internet. In other words, yeah, they may be earning $7.25 in cash, but they're getting about $20 an hour worth of stuff. You see what I'm saying here? And this is a significant issue because it illustrates the person side of the banker thing. The bankers wanted free lunch. The government wants free lunch. These people all want free flowing finances, free flowing fiat all over the place that they can borrow at zero or even, zero interest rates and make a huge profit on and not have to pay taxes on the profit and loan it to other people at huge amounts of money, etc. They're looking for a free lunch. And most of the people on the anti-work sub on Reddit that are saying that, you know, I have zero experience in anything. I only have a high school diploma and I only had a 2.0 GPA in high school. And I'm a stoner. And did I mention that occasionally I also do other drugs and I have no transportation of my own? But I will not work in retail. I cannot take any job that pays less than $20 an hour. And I must have a proper work life balance. And they wonder why they're unemployed. What happened in our financial system is the need want balance got itself seriously skewed. And then The bankers and the governments, since they had the ability to do so, staged a coup, and now the rest of us are all getting screwed over. And by the way, this is not just happening in America. All you people patting yourselves on the back in the Philippines, Canada, and everywhere else, guess what? You don't have real money either, people. You may not have noticed it yet, but you're in the same boat we're in on this. I'm sorry, but that's just, the immutable fact of life here. We're all on the same boat on this issue. So, just saying. Now let's go take a look and see if Kitco has anything interesting to say today. Not that I like Kitco at all. Well, the spot price, we closed at $1,895 for gold. Silver closed at $23.33, up 3 cents on the day. Good for silver. That means it's still on sale. That means when I go to my LCS tomorrow, I can back up the dang truck. Woohoo! Gold price at $6,000. This asset is more likely to triple. Ooh, we got a clickbait headline here. Let's see what this asset is here. It is essential to have exposure to real assets in this uncertain macro environment, according to Hugh Hendry, founder of Eclectica Macro. But Hendry still prefers to hold 4 times more Bitcoin than gold. And here's why. Kitco ought to just rename themselves Cryptco, okay? For real assets, from real assets, Hendry's top pick is gold. I would have 5% of my portfolio in gold. Hendry told Michelle McCory, lead anchor and editor-in-chief at Kitco News. Why gold? Because for the last 12 years, it has kept hitting this $2,000. It feels like there's a price barrier, and a lot of people want to own gold, but there's not enough economic stimulus or data to support a consistently higher gold price. In the months and years ahead, gold will move above this $2,000 an ounce resistance, which is when Hendry will start increasing his 5% position. If he had any sense, he'd be increasing the 5% position while it's still on sale. Just saying, okay? When it gets to 2,000, it fades, it falls away. But one of these days, maybe it's going to 2,100, 22, 23. When it breaks the barrier to the upside, I'm buying it. Okay, so we now know that Mr. Hendry puts faith in absolutely imaginary numbers, in imaginary money, and he doesn't have the sense to buy a highly undervalued asset on sale when he sees one. Okay, I'll live with that. At the time of writing, December COMEX gold futures were trading at $1,923 an ounce, and spot prices were $1,894.50 an ounce. Despite Hendry's positive outlook on gold, he is more bullish on Bitcoin with a 20% allocation. Mr. Hendry should switch those 2 allocations. But then again, he's an idiot. Just saying. I've got 20% of my portfolio in Bitcoin, not crypto. Bitcoin. Oh, yeah. Huge difference between crypto and Bitcoin. Oh, yeah. Okay. The reason being, Bitcoin is the new kid on the block and it's shown a proof of concept. Okay. This seems like a great way to handle the idea of investments in general. Oh, it's the new kid on the block. It's shown a great proof of concept. Instead of waiting to see what it can actually do in the real world, we're going to go ahead and throw 20% of our money into this. Oh, that's a great idea. I'm a total fan of this idea. After correcting from a record of nearly $70,000 in 2021 to under $30,000, there's a lot of potential upside in Bitcoin. For a full breakdown of how Hendry would invest $1 million, you can go to Kitco and watch the video. The goddess is pretty sure that anybody with an IQ higher than their underwear size will find the video hilarious. For Hendry, it all comes down to market capitalization. He compared Bitcoin's total market cap of $500 billion with a B to gold's market capitalization of 12.6 trillion with a T, stating Bitcoin has a much higher chance to triple in price than gold. So, imaginary zeros and ones that exist only on the blockchain, that are an ultimate object of faith, that are created by using ridiculous amounts of it. Well, they're mined and transferred around by using ridiculous amounts of energy against an actual physical. Yeah. Was he beat with a stupid stick before or after he ate the fruit of the idiot tree? Bless his heart. Can gold triple in price? Well, let's say gold's at 2,000. Can it trade at 6,000? Well, I don't care what it can trade at. The question is, what can I get for it? Can gold trade at 6,000? I don't know. I can't imagine. Oh, really? People just before Nixon put the last nail in the coffin of real money and decoupled us from the gold standard could never. Gold used to be at 30 something an ounce and it went to 400. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure. At 6,000, gold would have a 30 to 50 trillion dollar market cap. Well, money doesn't have a market cap. Okay? Gold would be valued more than all United States equities. It's already worth more than all United States equities. Our equities are all pledged to debt. Just saying. And that's a real hard one for me to imagine, he noted. Whereas if Bitcoin tripled, it would be the size of one large U.S. stock. It would be the size of Meta. Oh. So let's compare Bitcoin to a failing social media company that's run by a guy that was financed in the first place by three-letter government agencies and stole everything he ever built. Oh, and that would apply to Zuckerberg as well as Bill Gates. Okay, so just saying. Yeah, and comparing it to Meta sounds really great. Just saying. Even if Bitcoin's market cap reaches 1.5 trillion, it's still a fairly small market, Henry said. For Bitcoin to triple, all it needs is the right catalyst, which could be the approval of several spot Bitcoin ETFs, including BlackRock's application. Well, now we see some motivation here. There's an interesting name coming scuttling out of the woodwork. The house always wins. BlackRock always wins. Interesting. They see a gigantic opportunity to launch ETFs. And so the more that Bitcoin can go from $500 billion to 1 trillion to 2 trillion, 3 trillion, the more that the system of Wall Street, the casino, will make money. This guy is saying the quiet part out loud. Maybe we need a t-shirt that says Henry didn't kill himself. Just saying. If you're taking a bet, as an investor, I want to say I've got BlackRock, I've got Fidelity, Wall Street has got my back. They want Bitcoin to be higher, he explained. Okay. Henry highlighted he's against allocating more than 20 to 25% of his portfolio to equities. Henry also weighed in on whether more investors will opt for Bitcoin and gold as hedges against risks such as growing geopolitical tensions and the new fears surrounding central bank digital currencies. So instead of taking a nice regulated central bank digital currency, which nobody in their right mind would want in the first place, you're going to go ahead and take a totally unregulated Bitcoin. Yeah, go ahead. When addressing the accelerating de-dollarization trend with the BRICS summit kicking off in South Africa this week, Henry criticized those blindly believing the narrative. Okay. According to him, and it's in that video as well, de-dollarization is detached from economic logic and reason. So, inquiring minds want to know, do you think that Mr. Henry is spreading FUD on behalf of a three-letter government agency, or saying the quiet part out loud and maybe the next person to not kill himself, though it will look like he killed himself? or something else? Hmm. No idea, but I can tell you that the dude is really severely crazy. Okay, you have to be a little bit odd to see any logic or reason in that particular line of argument. Okay, gold bulls will need to stay patient for a little while longer. I think they've been saying that since about 1980. Yeah, we're very patient people here. Fundamentals, positioning, sentiment, and technical analysts all point to current delays, a further delay in gold's big move upward, according to Chris Yates of Asheron Insights. For the short and medium term fundamentals that influence the gold price, primarily the likes of real yields and the dollar, the outlook is still somewhat mixed for gold after what has been a terrific year for the sector, Yates notes. While it seems increasingly likely real yields are nearing their peak for the cycle, although they're not likely to return to negative territory in the immediate future, that's more a story for 2024. The headwind from real yields that has kept a lid on the gold price for the last 2+ years is reaching its crescendo. Yates said the fact that gold held up well despite the biggest spike in real yields in decades reaffirms his bullish long term case. A rate cut before 2024 was highly unlikely, but pointed to gold's historical positive performance once rate cuts begin. He said the inverted yield curve is also supportive of a significant move higher in precious metals. So he says. More charts and more strange things from this person. The goddess has a very simple position on this. Silver and gold are massively on sale. The goddess highly recommends using folded paper money, physical dollar bills, and such in your local coin shop over using your debit card, credit card, etc. online. If you do use your debit card, credit card, etc. online, be advised that many online bullion dealers will charge you a couple to 3% fee for certain types of purchase money. So Walmart doesn't charge credit card fees. Make sure you're buying directly from the Outnext store on Walmart. Yeah, free lunch always has strings attached, but people just don't see it that way. What do I think about Kenya, Africa? What do I think about Africa in general? The goddess has many, many thoughts about Africa. Africa has been sadly exploited primarily by China and Panda Land. Okay, but Africa as a whole has been looted by a large percentage of the world of many of its greatest assets. The Africans really need to follow what's going on in Niger at the moment. Because whatever you may say negative about this particular group of junta type people that have done something in Niger, at least they're giving Macron a little bit of crap, which is a good thing. The goddess doesn't like to see good parts of the world exploited. The goddess doesn't like to see reasonable good parts of the world or resource rich parts of the world exploited externally or internally by greedy asshats, which is what happens very frequently in Africa. Well, yeah. I mean, let me put it this way. You can buy for gold. You can buy for silver. The point is, all precious metals, basically gold and silver, the real money metals, are highly undervalued and on sale right now. It is a very good idea to back up the truck. It is a very good idea to have a set line item in your budget of X amount of fiat to be converted to silver and gold on a weekly or bi weekly or whenever you get a paycheck basis, day in, day out, week in, week out, every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, every 2 weeks. Buy that set amount, put it on autopilot, back up your truck, and start stacking it because it's not going to disappear. It's not going to go to zero. And if you don't hold it, you don't own it. You know? I mean, that's all there is to it. Right. Of course, I'd buy for silver. I like silver better.
Oh, anyhow. So, if the world is getting more calm and predictable, I missed it. Of course, we've been out of comms for 4 days, so perhaps all of a sudden Ukrainians are welcoming Russians as liberators. The United States has decided to leave other people alone, and money is
No, we are
not being printed anymore.
War.
Hmm.
War, fiddle-dee-dee. All this talk of war has ruined every barbecue this summer.
Anyhow, so the Mr. Virtue says thanks, Eva, and we got a lot of busy stuff done this weekend in the rain, almost all in the rain. There was rain. Did I mention it was raining? Luckily, it wasn't pouring. Nevertheless, it was just kind of intermittent, nonstop rain, except for Friday when it was blowing like a hurricane. But we got stuff done anyway. And we'll probably be up at top of the hill this weekend, do some more exploration. And not going to have a lot of days in the lab this week because getting stuff down there at Montana Bee just took us until I say we got back at 4 this afternoon. So we're going to have to spend tomorrow basically getting errands and laundry and stuff like that taken care of. It only leaves us 2 days out at the ranch, but we have electrolytic debris piling up. And Eva made the biggest individual bead from debris that she's so far. That was a little over 10 grams.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice yellow too. Little or nothing down real estate. You sound tired. A little bit, Graham. As an old geezer, it's kind of a bit of effort to climb up and down the shaft. I don't know. Let's see. We're probably running about a 2-to-1 ore to waste ratio. We sent approximately 50 buckets of ore to surface. Call it 200 total. That's 50 trips up and down a 30-foot ladder just for the ore. Now there's also, putting in stalls and this and that and the other. So, let's see. Let's do the math here. Let's call it 70 trips. 70 times 30. 2,100 vertical feet on a ladder in 3 days for an old geezer. Let's. Okay, I will check that out. Why don't we truck that? Child labor equals hungry. 2 ores to no, the other way. 2 waste rock to 1 ore. Yeah, the vein's only about this wide right now, and I got a, mine about 30 inches wide to to operate in. And let's say we had some interesting stuff on the wall too that they left. I'm not sure why. It looks visually very similar to the ore that they mined out right next to it. But we took a sample. We'll see what it runs. Make it wide enough. Yeah, that's basically about it. The part where I'm mining, where the ladder track goes, um, I think it's 24 inches wide, the ladder track. So I'm basically making it, about 30 inches. Not much, not much extra at all. And so we'll see. The If the price of gold triples, well, we got a big dump outside that we can probably turn into gold. Actually, there's a couple big dumps. One of them is below the access road level, and it looks to be by far the biggest. No, what is a Hilti power load, honey bunny? Not sure what those are. Let's see. I presume Hilti power loads. Okay. Powder actuated tools. I'm thinking it's more like a RAM set or something, but let's see. Register. No, I don't really want to. Products. Power loads. Power loads. Exoskeleton and human augmentation systems. Okay, this is getting pretty weird. Let me see this one. Exoskeleton and human augmentation systems. What the heck? Exoskeleton. Okay. Let's see what it looks like.
Oh, so all of a sudden you could.
Shoulder exoskeleton. But it keeps. There's this decision tree thing here. It's getting pretty weird. Wearable construction exoskeleton, which helps relieve shoulder and neck fatigue when working above shoulder level for bicep circumference, from $1,399. So I guess it's when you're hoisting stuff up over your head or something. Huh. Hilti power loads. Ram set construction. See, that's what I'm thinking, is it's basically a powder activated tools. Yeah, I've done the Sierra Blaster. That's what I've got. And the negative, I can think of something like a ram setter where it's going to be right there. When I pop with the Sierra Blaster, there can be a little bit of fly. Then hit it with a hammer. Yeah, Sierra Blasters are. Huh, could you send me a link, honey bunny? That could be pretty helpful. Yeah, the Sierra blasting equipment, the whole rig is fairly expensive. The charges are, I think they were $1.75 each or something.
Well, it's a very well designed thing.
It's designed to be very safe when used for anything.
Considering the number of idiots out there, it's probably a bad idea.
Yeah, there's no such thing as idiot proof, only idiot resistant. There's always some idiot out there willing to disprove that idiot proof theorem. There seems to be a never ending lack of them, although the supply needs to be constantly replenished. Uh, anyhow, but it was well. They always build more of them. I don't know about better, but yeah, uh, the Hilti hammer has been doing a pretty good job so far for the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 feet or so. I haven't had to use the Sierra Blaster. Yeah, I agree, Jean Francois. Just think of it as evolution in action. Um, but yeah, it's some spots are fairly hard, but a lot of times if you come around from the other direction, you can split stuff off reasonably efficiently. And my problem right now in terms of progress is more the ore to waste ratio because the ore is softer than the waste in general, and so I'll mine that out of the middle, then that gives me a free face to break stuff to from there, and I have to use special attention near the ladder track. Pig coolers? Oh my goodness. My problem, Kodak, is drilling because when it gets too hard for the demo hammer, it burns up drill bits so fast it's freaking ridiculous. And so, uh, as a general rule, uh, until it gets really darn hard, it's not worth it to get out the drill and the Sierra Blaster. It does work, but I have to re regrind the drill bits on a regular basis. A drill bit usually lasts only about, well, those are for driving like a ram set or something like that, but they're not designed to fracture rock. At least none that I've seen. Yeah, well, I haven't used them, but I've been working with a guy who was using them. He was the boss, so he got to use the ram set stuff, and they work pretty good for driving a chunk of steel into evaporative coolers. Now that's going to really work well in the Philippines, Tricky. Yeah, yeah, that's what I've been doing, Jean Francois. Except I usually use an angle grinder with a diamond blade, and once you get the hang of it, it's not that hard. Yeah, I have two once, but so the main thing is these, good quality carbide masonry bits. They'll just, and when I'm drilling into crypt, and again, if it ain't really hard, I don't need to blast it. That demo hammer will bust it up pretty good. And the only thing I ever worry about is when it's really hard, and that's really tough on the drill bits. So um, yeah, so I haven't had to use the Sierra Blaster in quite a while. Um, but demolition hammer. I don't know. Let's see what she put up there. Yeah, let's see. A Hilti TE 1000 AVR. Tell you what, I'll show you the one I got. Wow, that's cheap now. That's got to be rebuilt or for sale. Yeah. Yeah, it's used. Okay. Um, for about 600, you can rebuild it. Let's see. Let's go to. Uh, how much do they charge for the toolbox? $72 used for just the box. Wow. Yeah, let's see. A Hilti is an electric jackhammer, so to speak. Products. Let's see. PE 1000. Yeah, there it is. And this is what I use, Jean, um, because this hammer will break through the vast majority of rock pretty efficiently. And Control C, go back over here, Control V. Uh, a real demolition hammer weighs about 80 pounds, possibly. And the Hilti, what I like is that it has the TE1000 AVR. It's the AVR part that makes a big difference. It's about, I think it's about 26 pounds, like your Bosch there, Honey Bunny. But the Bosch that I've used does not have active vibration reduction. And I have a big Bosch hammer. It's probably 35 pounds. And it doesn't go any faster through the rock than my 26-pound Hilti. And it beats me up a lot more. Okay. Does it take the SDS bits? They're pretty big. You know, they're this big in diameter. Um, and I'm not sure what the actual chuck is, but it's like an SDS sort of. It's a hexagonal shank with 6 grooves in it, and you pull back on the chuck, slide it in, release the chuck, and it grips them. And it does fine. And it will break. Um, I say it'll break as fast as the big jackhammer type Bosch. Okay, with a lot less effort. It's a lot easier on me to maneuver a thing. I say, yeah, if you're going to rent one, I think the TE1000 AVR, if they've got one, you'll like how easy it is to manipulate. It's a lot lighter, same kind of power. Um, one thing I would suggest, you have a handle on it where you undo a little nut and rotate it down in position. And let me draw a little thing on the board here. If I can find, there we go. Now, side view, you would typically look at it. Here's your handle. Here's the body of the device. Here's your chuck. And there's your bit. On the side of this, there's a handle. You can rotate it around It has a pivot point here, and it can fold down this way when during storage, or you swing it out. Now, I used to swing it like this, okay? The problem was when you're starting to get it stuck or whatever, and you're pulling and yanking and jerking on it, the corrugations in this joint right here tend to get worn out. It tends to slip past it. So if you take it and run the handle at this angle, it doesn't tend to do that. You can yank like a son of a gun, and it won't rotate this, and it won't wear out those little spline-like devices, you know? Yeah, battery operated tools have very limited life. This thing right here is, it says no less than 10 gauge cord, not over 100 feet. So it's got to be pulling right around 15 amps continuous. So that's what, over 1 horsepower? Something like that. I mean, it has beaten up a lot of rock. I rebuilt it last year. It was getting a little unreliable, and the what do you call it? Um, the brush worn indicator lit up. Sounds about right, Jean-Francois. Well, let's say I imagine it probably could, but we're not seeing any signs of the vein continuing much into the rock beneath the ladder track, Ricky. However, the back of the decline, it's still, 20, 24 inches wide. Now there's another decline above that comes down there. And so we're looking at the possibility of mining the area between the declines and what would be the most safe and effective way of doing that. Because we could go above it and work into it from the upper decline, but we'd have to clear the opening out a little bit, and not sure what's even there. But where I'm at right now is, the back looks like there's plenty of vein there. So as we're building these decks across, then we're going to sample the back on the way down and go from there. But yeah, we may very well start mining there. It's shallow enough. There shouldn't be much pressure, so we should be able to use stoles and things like that. Yeah, that's my thought, Chris. But right now, we're just kind of sampling as we advance and getting an idea of what that vein is there that they left. Oh, there's no doubt that it's got its advantages, John. Absolutely. But yeah, there's possibly now the old timers advanced along the fault line, the perpendicular vein at the 40-foot level. What was that, about 50 feet?
Yeah.
About 50 feet there. If you go over the bridge over Moria, then, you get there. And it didn't do real well. but it's kind of hard to tell. The assumption is that it's an ore chute, it's almost vertical. And so we'll have to, just see what we run into. Right now, where I'm advancing that ladder track, I've actually started curving it up and away from that wall because it just pinches off to almost nothing. And so, now I've heard generally in earthquakes, honey bunny, that not much breaks loose unless it's really heavily mined area because everything moves at the same time. Okay. I talked to one guy who said that he was in a mine when they had an earthquake. He said you look down the track drift and you could see waves in the track. And he said nothing fell down. It was scary as hell. you know, that's pretty good. That's nice and descriptive, honey bunny. But we're such shallow depths that there's not much pressure. So I don't know, but um, we're going to have to get better grade to make it worthwhile. That's the problem. I mean, right now I'm advancing, but another 2 or 3 weekends of effort, we're going to be down at that 40-foot level, and we better have, because when we're at the 40-foot level, looking at the back, I'm not seeing much that looks real exciting. How about you, little one?
No, not really.
I didn't see much there. So I'm thinking that it's not going to be that good at that point. But we'll now have a landing and a little space to work, and we could start essentially a new ladder track down below that. And that the bottom has been heavily trenched out, so there must be something there. But we'll have to see. And that's what I'm thinking, Chris. We'll just take it, keep going, get to the 40-foot level, clean it all off, and yeah, you don't have to move all that rock, Chris. We're trying to advance uh, a little faster than before, um, but yeah, we're still going to wind up with a, I don't know, 10, 12-foot platform. That should be more than enough. Then we'll see where we go from there. And then we'll also be doing the stuff on top of the hill. Does it have close to the same value? Also, if it's not too deep, it's all oxidized. Yeah, I know, Chris, but in order to do that, I got to move another 15 cubic yards of solid rock. This is not an easy task. Now, if I was moving high grade ore in reasonable quantities, you bet. I mean, there's a reason I started at that original angle. I should have a 15-foot platform at the 40-foot level under those conditions. You know? Yeah, that sounds pretty scary. Um, but anyhow, so it's all well oxidized in this area, um, and that's one reason it leaches so well. But it's the grade. Now the other thing, once we get to the 40-foot level, we can theoretically have easy access over to the bottom of the other decline and see what we got there. But again, it's not the kind of grade and tonnage we're really needing to make this profitable. At this point, it's not theoretically profitable. We need either the tonnage and production to go way up or the grade to go up, and um, we're we're just not sure it's going to cut the mustard. we shall have to see. But there's a lot of possibilities, but nothing suitable. What would it take to establish haulage on the 40 to the side of the mountain? We would, at the approximately at the quad road level, we would have to do 25, 30 feet of horizontal tunneling through the rock. Okay. And, yeah, well, I'm sorry, but sandstone that's not pretty is not something you can haul from 40 miles away and make money. You can get it a lot cheaper closer by in most cases. So yeah, that's it would be nice if there was something. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's ocean picture stone or whatever, you know. So let's say at this point, I don't know if Montana Bee is going to make it, but nothing's really pretty or anything there, honey bunny. It's just nothing that'll polish or look cool or no big crystals or nothing like that. And there's a lot of stuff around here that does have that. This is just not one of those mines. But that's also why we're exploring other possibilities. Exactly, Kodak. Um, yes, if we were to increase um, the tonnage, absolutely. And in theory, that perpendicular vein structure runs down the side of the mountain to where we could theoretically follow it and find down at valley level where we could punch in um, and doing like that. But again, you're going to have the combination of grade and tonnage. If so, if you did have a good starting point, yeah, that would be great. You know, what kind of crystals, honey bunny? I say that would be the easiest thing to do. Is just start at the bottom of the hill. Um, but again, that takes money too. None of this happens instantaneously without effort and without cost. We're working on the dowsing and things like that, but so far nothing. Clean quartz, okay, crystals, those can sometimes be valuable. How big were they, honey bunny? That sounds like me. He was watching us. Not sure why.
Because somebody has asked me to send them a couple of links
Ah,
to videos with the goddess in them so they
okay,
can see me working.
okay. Anyhow, so yeah, that would be the ideal situation is to, I say, get down at the base of the hill and punch into that uh, fracture zone. Now, that, that kind of assumes that the fracture zone has sufficient width and grade to make it worthwhile. I would think that the old timers probably thought of that one, and there's a reason that they didn't do it. But I'm thinking that they probably started more on the pack rat vein, okay, and the pack rat structure, and then just went over to the perpendicular and opened it up. But I don't know. I have no clue. And there's more stuff up on that hill. There's a couple other old mines that I haven't gone underground to explore because, quite frankly, it's a bit sketchy, and I prefer to avoid sketchy. Um, and I haven't seen the showings on surface like in old dumps. No, no, we have no information, and all possible information that might be available is locked in a warehouse on 2 miles away from me that's not going to be available for 2 years. They're building a new museum. Everything is in boxes, put away. Thanks a lot. You know, I say, it's just so frustrating. I'm sure there's some information. Montana Bureau of Mines doesn't have it. The Historical Society is building a new frickin' museum because everything's in storage until they finish building the new museum. Exactly. So, anyhow, such is life. But we're looking for other things. Dave Van has some potentially interesting stuff. Uh, it's on maps, but they have uh, no records of anything. Say USGS. I I went to the Bureau of Mines, which would have anything the USGS has. Okay, I had a guy look. I gave him the name. I gave him the township section range, the whole 9 yards. Couldn't find nothing. Okay. Uh, yeah, exactly. See, now Dave here, he's got a mine not too far away that may have potential, and we're looking at sampling that and seeing what it's got. And if it's got some good stuff, we may just switch targets. We'll see. Like I say, we got this top of the hill stuff. We got a couple of portals there we need to open up, get inside, and do some underground sampling. But that's, again, don't happen by itself. It takes time. Don't know how long top of the hill is going to remain open because it's 7,000 feet. It'll get snowed in fairly early. So that's a situation. I'm also not sure what the grizzly bear situation is right now. The huckleberries are ripe, so that's what we did initially, Honey Bunny. We looked at like 6 mines in this general mining area that the claim owner had possession of, and this was the best of those 6. Since then, we've looked at one, two, uh, three, at least 3 other mines to check them out and looked at some other possibilities to check them out. So it's not like we've focused, it's Montana be or bust. It's like, well, that's the best thing we got going now. Say, we got Dave Van that you may have something better. In which case, okay, we got someplace better. So we shall have to see what we shall have to see. But, right now, this is it. And we've got top of the hill. Um, Ricky, you're inaccurate in some ways. They did leave a lot, but not a lot that was worth it to them. Situation has changed. For example, uh, that area that Miner Jim found, you know, well, that could work, honey bunny, but right now I don't need to break any rock up there, you know. Um, but I say it's interesting, but when you're dealing with us on a small scale, you have certain parameters. When you're dealing on a larger scale, you have different parameters. Miner Jim found some interesting stuff. He was able to sell it to a mid-sized mining company. More power to him. It looks like there's a fair amount of base metals there too, and so we shall see what we shall see on that. But there's a lot of stuff that get left here. The question is there anything good? Miner Jim says he's got a friend who has a mine less than 30 miles that direction right there that has visible gold in rose quartz. And the guy mines about 100, 150 pounds a year, turns it into jewelry, and makes good money, you know? So, say that's, there's a lot of possibilities around here, but it takes time and money to search possibilities too. I'm really disappointed that Jeff wasn't able to get here this year because he's got quite a few mines over there near Indian Creek that who knows what was there. We were looking to look at all that stuff too. I don't know. We don't know, but we got plenty to keep us busy for this season as far as I'm concerned. We also have lots of laboratory work to do and procedures and stuff like that. So the potential of which, David, are you talking to me or Honey Bunny? Say Dave Van, he's got a couple of different mines. One's relatively close. I mean, not the sort of thing that you'd commute to. The potential, nothing proven at this point, but there's in all the areas that we're looking at, there are some decent sized mines in the past. So there's potential there. We'll find out. We haven't found anything right now that we go, yep, we found it. But we're looking, and we're looking hard, and we're learning a lot and having a good time. But time and resources are limited, so there's only so much we can accomplish. But I think this season we got plenty to keep us busy. Then this winter, we don't have nearly as much in the way of research to do, I don't think. Although it would be nice if Eva and I could take a fire assay course at Montana Bureau of Mines. That's a good question. Let me write that down here. Montana spell key mines assay course. Well, we're gonna see if we could take a fire assay course, things like that. And I would also like to take geology and mineralogy, but we'll see how it all works out. And that, of course, completely ignores Armageddon approaching, which can throw a curveball in your thing. Oh, by the way, little one, we need to find that resin. I'm sure we got another bucket somewhere.
Which resin?
The resin we are looking for, the Max Water 104133 bucket of unused resin that has disappeared.
You said that all that stuff went to the shop. The box is full.
It's not there. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It ain't here.
We're totally screwed without.
No, it's somewhere. We know that it exists. We don't know where it is. But a 5-gallon bucket is theoretically locatable.
Yeah, because I thought we had like a couple of boxes that we took to the shop.
Yes, we did, but they're not there anymore. So I'm thinking maybe on the back shelf at the ranch.
Yeah, possibly.
I said that's the only thing I can think of because I I believe I left it there when we started the season, figuring we probably wouldn't use it all. And I looked where we put it, and it's not there. And I know you asked me, you said we were getting low, so I'm wondering if several weeks ago I took it over there to have it on hand, and of course the on hand stuff would be on that back shelf.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but we need to look for it. Yeah, that happens on a regular basis, Jean Francois. Uh, but yeah, so we got lots to do. Yeah, considering that's how much resin? About $300 worth of resin.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, because what I thought,
Mm-hmm.
and I may be misremembering here,
Okay.
I thought that the bucket, the 5 gallon bucket that I am almost finishing up now,
Mm-hmm.
was the last of the resin we had in buckets. Because I remember last year, in the middle of the year,
Mm-hmm.
we opened up another bag and we combined our first 5 gallon bucket and that bag into the current 5 gallon bucket.
So you remember another bag being put into this bucket?
Yes, and that is the bag I'm finishing. And I remember at the end of the year last year, you moved boxes to the shop, but no buckets. The bucket that's there, but no other buckets, just the boxes to the shop so they wouldn't get frozen.
The boxes?
Yeah, we had 8 box because you had bought like 200 or 300 pounds of resin.
Yeah, well, not that much, but so there was a box of resin with a bag in it, or two bags in it, something like that. Hmm. Well, anyhow, we need to try and find if there's any resin laying around. You know, where do you get your resin? Let's see. Hmm. Good question. Let me look. Let's see. Hmm. Let's see. Let's see. Methyl isobutyl ketone. That's been a while. Let's see. There it is. How big were those boxes, little one? Do you remember?
I think they were 50 pounds.
They were big ones because this is a 5 pound
Yeah. They were like
package.
50-pound boxes, and we got 3 or 4 of them because I remember you. Uh, Tom was, he was.
I understand. I think what I might have done was use this. That's the resin, but I think we bought it in larger packaging than that. Take care, Mr. Virtue. Um, well, let's see here. $72 for 5 pounds. $14 a pound that way. I think it was a little cheaper than that.
Uh-huh. And I remember we got like 3 boxes,
Hmm.
3 or 4 heavy boxes.
Yeah, I remember.
And in the middle of the summer, last summer, my first bag of resin that we had was almost empty. So he brought me out.
Well, we can always see how much used resin we got laying around too to get an idea. But we need to figure that out. If we need more resin, we need to get it. We'll have to see.
Yeah,
Anyhow, no, we didn't lose our gold. We lost some resin. I don't know. What is this here? This looks pretty good thing. The question is, what are they called? I'll go ahead and save this. No, I haven't seen anyone about that. Anyhow, find resin. Okay. Yeah, the price is a little better. I'm not sure. We tried several resins, compared them, and that was the best by a significant margin. They do not all work the same. So I'm not sure how well that would work. But yeah, the molecular details are different, and it was one of those deals where I don't know, but it worked pretty good. So I thought we had extra left over. When did you add that to the bag you're working on now, little one? Did you say?
Um, that current bucket of resin
Mm-hmm.
I have been working on since slightly over halfway through last year. Took it right up to the end, and and that was the only bucket we had of resin.
Mm-hmm.
The rest was in boxes, in bags, inside boxes. If you want to get exact here.
Let's see. It doesn't seem to have my. Let's try seeing if I can find my account. Log into my account. Recent orders. $738 shipped on 3/10/2022. View details. Free shipping, that's fine. Date ordered. Hello. Quantity 10 5-pound packages. Okay, so we ordered 50 pounds in 5-pound increments. That's right. And then they called up and said, could we send it in bulk instead?
Yes.
That's right. I remember that. Well, anyhow, we need to look around and see if we can find it. And if we can't, we'll need to tell the boss we're running low. Okay? So anyhow, that's what it was, because we got a larger bulk size, but that was because they were running low on the 5-pound packages or something. That's what it was. Um, we do not change the pH of the Eco Goldex pregnant solution before contacting it with the resin. We keep our pH between 10 and 10.5 because we found out from bottle rolls that that seems to do a little better job in terms of speed of dissolution. And that just goes straight to the resin. Yeah, that's my thought, Ricky, is that in many cases they left stuff then that would be worse stuff now. And when they first started mining in this area, especially like I know by Radersburg, they were actually shipping the high grade ores to Cornwall, England. They were loading it on river boats, sending it down the Missouri River, and shipping it across an ocean. Now, one can be pretty certain that they were not shipping low grade ores. Um, so, anyhow, that means that they had to throw away a lot of stuff. And I've, seen some dumps that had some pretty good assays. I'd like to find a big dump that has a pretty good assay. And one can be certain that all the good ore bodies have not been found. If nothing else, there's ore bodies that simply do not outcrop on surface. Therefore, there was no way for someone to find them. I am sure, for example, in that mountain the Montana Bee is located at, there are ore bodies close to surface somewhere that are not apparent. I mean, I can go directly above the the mountaintop on the perpendicular vein. I can't hardly find it. Right above the um, upper decline, it just narrows down to a crack. You know, were you ever able to get good recovery? You betcha, Ricky. With the Eco Goldex, we get like 85% recovery in 24 hours of leaching in the bottle roll. Not quite so good in a tank, but we have more time because our mining rate is not nearly what the processing rate. We basically spend about a week. If we were mining at good speed, just Eva and me, we'd be running about one tank load per week, which means, you know, 1 day to fill it, 5 days to leach it, 1 day to empty it, refill the tank with solution, and be ready to add ore the next day. So we'd have about a 5 day tank leach, and then we dump it on the tailings pad where it gets more leaching than that. I mean, when we came back this spring, we found more gold in solution than when we left. So I say yeah, it's the good recovery is decent. The question is simply grade and tons right now. That's our issue. Everything else we got figured out, but grade and tons is not something you can tweak. It's something you either find or you don't find. So that's the way life is. And let's say we're working other things like Dave Van and Top of the Hill, and we were working Jeff Kablock. How do you test the pregnant solution to figure out if there's still gold in it? Well, that gets a little complicated, Jean-Francois, because a stannous chloride precipitation, as I recall, worked okay, but you had to evaporate. On the other hand, we use a solution called KD3, which was invented years ago by somebody for a field gold test in hard rock. And its specific purpose is to precipitate gold out of a, I believe it was a chloride solution. I mean, it's basically a very dilute method of making um, an aqua regia digestion, but it also precipitates it out of the Eco Goldex, and we use what's known as a spot plate. It's a ceramic plate with a bunch of little wells on the surface. We put half a milliliter of solution and 1 drop of KD3, let it evaporate, and if the more gold there is, the darker a gray it turns. So it's not very precise, but it gives us excellent ability to tell when our resin is loaded. Yes, Eco Gold X is weird. It's complicated. Not sure how it works. That's deliberate on their part. They've deliberately made it confusing. But anyhow, um, so I would try stannous chloride, but use a spot test. Um, we found, believe it or not, over at the dollar store, um, and they had they had these little things in the paint section. It's designed for mixing paints in the little wells. It's just a plastic thing with, it's white with these little small wells in it, and it made good spot. Have you ever used any of those yet?
I have tested them to make sure that the acetone isn't going to dissolve them. I'm going to use one tomorrow when we go there.
Okay,
But each one is just the right size to do a complete set of tests.
Yeah, I know. Anyhow, we've not actually done a solution test just yet because we just got them. But what did you get? Like 5 of them for $1.25 or something?
6 of them in a
Six-
package for $1.25.
6 of them in a package for $1.25. Each one has 6 wells, which for what we do is perfect because in a standard day of testing, Eva will take a sample from the agitation tank and test it for pH, for Eco Gold X, and for gold concentration. Then we have a 4 cartridge resin absorption system. So you need a head grade, the concentration after the first cartridge, second cartridge, third cartridge, fourth cartridge. There's 5. Plus the agitation tank, you need 6. So that's the perfect size for Eva to do 1 day's worth of tests. They look to be high density polyethylene. The standard spot plates that Eva is using right now are ceramic, a glazed ceramic. But either way, you say we'll be testing it. Ask next week, Jean-Pierre, Jean-Francois, and we'll see. I'm not trying to drive anything in the rock. I'm trying to put a high pressure charge of gas into the rock, a pre-drilled hole, and split the rock. Will that do that? Because I don't. There's a lot of people like Ramset that drive an anchor or something into concrete or whatever, but I need to blow the concrete apart. Possibly Honey Bunny. The activated carbon they usually use in mining is coconut shell because of the extreme mechanical strength compared to, say, charcoal. But as I say, it's one of the things. We're not. This is not common. This is raw ore, and it is oxidized. We're not roasting anything. We're just pulverizing the ore, mixing it with solution, and dissolving it, and dissolving the gold. And then we're extracting the gold from the solution. Pretty much, David. I don't. Trying to think of what the supplier was for the. I'd like to get some experience in flotation, Ricky, but Montana B, the ore is too fine. The gold is too fine to float, according to the experts. No, you can't, Jean Francois. It's no longer made. Luckily, tracked down the guy who used to work with the guy who invented it, and he still got some in stock. Okay. Let's see. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's not going to be there. Let's see. KD-3. There he is. Now, I'm going to give you his email. Okay. I don't know what the formula is, but you can say that, I referred you. If he doesn't like me referring you to him, let me know so I won't do it anymore. Okay. Control V. Okay. That's the guy who still got some KD3 left over. Okay. News question. Do you add some stuff to bind the gold so it becomes hydrophobic? You would usually add, yes. And they're called attractants, which basically causes the desired mineral to stick to the flotation bubbles, the bubbles. And depending upon what the mineral is, what the gang is, and things like that, they have all kinds of different attractants and suppressants. Most of the attractants are xanthanates, but even pine oil is a very common base for that stuff. But it's going to depend on the size of the gold. The reason we haven't done any flotation experiments on this gold for Montana B was because the experts say that any gold that small is not going to stick to the bubbles. Yeah, I say there's all kinds of things that'll work. But one of the issues with flotation is you have to get the particles to stick to the bubble, and there's some physical limits of size. That doesn't even float. It just stays in suspension, Chris. I mean, it was just insane. But anyhow, this stuff is so fine that getting it to stick to the particles is theoretically going to be very difficult. Calgon. I think they were the ones who made the coconut shell charcoal we used. Calgon. But I'm not sure.
Calgon is in Calgon Take Me Away?
No, Calgon is in Calgon Chemical Company.
Okay. Well, maybe they also...
Well, Jean-Francois, The the problem is that this gold is so fine it won't stick. That the surface tension of the bubble is so strong it just bounces off. Something like that. Yep. Um, Actually, pine oil is a pretty good flotation thing. For yours, Jean-Francois, flotation might work fine. Again, it depends on the size of the particles, but my particles are 1/4 the size. 80% of it is smaller than 1/4 the size of talcum powder. That gives you an idea just how small it is. Give it a shot, Jean-Francois. Absolutely. If you take your ore, sample, or I'd go with concentrates just to make the results more obvious, but just put it in with the some pine oil and some water and shake the bejesus out of it, skim off the foam, and um, test the foam and test the tailings. Yeah, Jean-Francois, a lot of stuff can be used in a lot of different ways. Uh, could be. Anyhow, but that they make some very specific immersion blender. Yeah, I guess so. Just had a thought. If you know you have an emulsion of gold, yes, if you had an emulsion, an immersion blender is just one of those little things you stick into whatever you want to blend and push the handle, and it spins a little uh, rotor at the tip.
Stick blender. They're also
stick
called.
Blender, something like that.
Drink frother in a coffee bar.
Yeah, I don't know, just any kind of a blender. Yeah, that should work. Should do fine. If it's amenable to it. There's reasons it might not work. But Chris, what's the general particle size you're going to get with flotation? Down to what? Maybe 500 mesh, something like that? Not sure. Once you need it fairly violent, honey bunny, because you got to get the gold particles to penetrate the surface tension of the bubble and stick to it. Otherwise, they'll bounce off. The agitators they use in those flotation tanks are pretty violent. The spargers and impellers. Okay, so about 500 mesh roughly. Yeah, it's worth a shot. It's cheap. It's easy. Why not? If it works, fine. What I did, Jean-Francois, was you take care, David. I had this ore. Assays say it's got a lot of gold in it. Okay, so I ran it over my gravity separation device, which is pretty good. Okay, and I was only getting about 20% of the gold. And so I'm like, now this is weird. So what I did, depends on what you're trying to get out of it, Jean-Francois. You need to pretty much get mineral liberation. So yeah, it always depends on the ore. Exactly. Generally somewhere in the 100 mesh range, but it all depends. You have to test. And yeah, so what I did was I took this ore and I took a sample. Whenever I get a big sample, like half a bucket or whatever, I do tests with small portions. And once I had that bucket assayed, I know what that bucket was, so I could do more tests fairly easy. So I took some of this gold with a known quantity, ore with a known quantity, put it in a bucket with some water, and stirred it up. And then I waited a minute and I poured off half of the water, something like that. Put a little more water in there, stirred it like, no tomorrow. Waited a minute, poured off some water, and like that. And so I did that like 3 times. And then I let both buckets settle, carefully poured off the water, let it dry, and sent those samples off to the lab. The stuff that stayed suspended in the water was higher grade than the original ore. The gold just stayed suspended like silt, did not want to settle down. That told us something really whack's going on. So luckily we have the Montana Bureau of Mines 70 miles from here. We took it over there. $1,000 and some electron microscopes later, there's the answer. As a matter of fact, I have to be careful what I actually show you here. You see, here's actual images of actual particles, color coded according to the minerals that actually had gold in them. And you'll notice there's a preponderance of brown, which would be the iron. Let me Now let's see. Now, here is an iron particle. This big thing is an iron particle. This scale is 20 microns. These are the gold particles in that iron particle, or actually on the surface of that iron particle. That give you an idea? This kind of testing is not cheap, but it does give you a lot of information. So, once we knew that we had this really, really fine gold, then it became pretty obvious, well, the only thing that we can do is dissolve it, And so then we had to start looking for something that we could use, was legal to use, and then try and figure out how to make it work, and blah, blah, blah. And the rest is history. But it's been interesting. Now we have a system that seems to work. All righty. Anyone else got anything else? I'll try and have Eva bring home a spot plate with some tests on it.
Will do.
This week, so that next Monday we can show you, Jean-Francois. It's very simple. It costs us about a penny per sample to test. That KD3 is not expensive. Well, it's fairly expensive, like $50 a pint, but you use it 1 drop per test. Yeah. Well, then you know what I'm talking about, Jean-Francois. I'll say, we'll show you what the results look like so you have a good idea of what we're talking about. Shelf life of KD3, I really don't know. The first stuff we used was several years old. I know that because it was Lauren's, and he'd bought the original Gold Hunter test kit, and we were trying the stannous chloride to precipitate. And he said, why don't we try some of this stuff? It worked even better than the stannous chloride. So, say as far as I know, the shelf life is pretty good, years. I can tell you that much.
You want to put it in glass as soon as you get it.
Yeah, although we did find out that the latest bottles that came in disintegrated, so you want to put it in a glass bottle once it gets there. Uh, anyhow, anything else? Uh, Make sure to write down any questions so that next Monday you can ask them, Jean-Francois. You drive a good conversation on the live stream here. Appreciate it. So, and thank you for all your help, Honey Bunny. Appreciate it. You too, Chris. Oh, thanks to everybody for showing up. That's the way you become something besides a total noob, Jean-Francois. Alrighty. Well, y'all take care. Keep it safe out there and have fun. Okay? Yeah, I say there's a lot of variables, Ricky. Absolutely. Alrighty. Well, I'm going to call it a night. I'm kind of tired. And appreciate it. And thank you for checking on the fire status the other day, Chris. I appreciate it. And as Honey Bunny says, happy prospecting and keep it safe out there. You're welcome, Jean-Francois. Oops. Close that. Hit this button instead.